A necromancer named Hector calls upon his monster to show the world their combined power. Another masked mage casts the poison tongue spell, preparing to act. In this world, necromancers are magicians who create knights from corpses for battle. The little boy looks at this with admiration, thinking that necromancy is pretty damn cool. 17 years later, we see a dark city of necromancers built around a giant skull. A grown boy named Naus tries to revive his knight, commanding him to overcome death. He speaks the words of the spell, Lacrote and Extenra, touching the body on the operating table. The ritual is interrupted by a bright flash of red energy that throws him back. He failed again, although the muscle density and nervous system reconstruction were perfect. Surrounded by clutter and books, he decides he needs to start over. He works hard, breathing heavily and sweating, completely focused on his work. The boss scolds him for poor cleaning and orders him to redo everything. Everyone is talking about the Battle of Necromancers, the popularity of which is breaking all records every year. At a school for young necromancers, a teacher in a skull mask demands that the students speak louder. Us performs heavy physical work and is constantly rushed and hurried. Even as he works, he thinks about materials, musing that the harpy's claws are as hard as steel. He studies the book as he goes, reading that materials need to be properly prepared before being connected to muscles. Suddenly, he is knocked down by another necromancer, who rudely tells him to get out of the city. The necromancer girl contemptuously calls him a piece of trash, and her companion confirms that this is the same trash. He remembers his past, how he was born in a garbage dump and ate waste, being a vile piece of trash. The girl asks with disgust how one can eat garbage and adds that his father was the same. They call him not a man, but a walking piece of shit, and the shadow of a monstrous past appears behind him. The offenders leave, saying that he only spoils the mood, and the boy remains on his knees. He firmly declares that he is not trash, recalling the words that only you decide who you will become. He stands up and the girl mockingly asks if he really thinks that everyone will accept him if he becomes a necromancer. She mocks him, saying that he doesn't even have a knight and he wasted a decade. Her knight presses his face into the ground, ordering him not to stink up the place with his trash and to get lost. She finishes the threat by promising that next time they will simply dispose of him. The words that only you decide who you become echo in his memory again. This phrase was first said by the great necromancer Raphael. He was an orphan from the slums, but he won 6 consecutive victories in the Battle of Necromancers, setting an unparalleled record. So Raphael became the most famous man in the world, and the boy also wanted to be like him. He dreamed of being recognized at least once in his life, of being applauded by the whole world. But his inner demon taunts him, asking if he really thought he could do it. The action moves to the necromancy materials store. A customer wearing glasses complains that the materials available today are of very poor quality and there is nothing worthwhile. Us notices a body in the back room and asks what it is, and the seller replies that it is garbage for disposal. The buyer inquires about the humanoid material, and the seller explains that it has already been purchased 13 times. However, no one could get her to move, so she was returned back every time. The seller explains that spells don't work on it. It's a rare case of completely unsuitable material. The seller asks if the buyer is interested in it, and says that they were already thinking of selling it for pennies without the possibility of return. According to the rules, he can't tell everything. But according to rumors, in life she was a legendary mercenary whose fist could smash anything. But he adds that the knight does not need either memory or thoughts, because they are just a tool, so it does not matter who she was in life. The young man refuses to buy, saying that the material, which has failed 13 times, is too big a risk. In the end, he bought it anyway, spending all his remaining money. Now he doesn't have a penny left for tomorrow's food or next month's rent. He understands that this may be his last chance, although the chances of success are almost zero. For some reason, he feels that he wants to try it with her. He says decisively that no matter what anyone says, they can do it and become the best. He is determined and declares that they will make this world applaud them. Suddenly, her body begins to glow and her hair rises upward under the influence of magical energy. The shocked young man cannot believe his eyes and asks if he succeeded. The girl, who has come to her senses with red eyes, looks at him and asks who he is. The next moment, they both start screaming in horror. The young man screams in panic, as if a corpse could speak. The girl responds by swinging a glowing red fist at him. Suddenly, the young man is overcome by a vision where a dark entity mocks him, asking if such a worthless person really thought of becoming a necromancer. Shadow screams at him to come to his senses, calling his mother a piece of trash who ruined her life. The demon continues that the scum's puppy will also become scum, and no matter how hard he fights, he is just vile trash. No one will ever recognize him because he is a nobody. He comes to his senses and realizes that it was that same dream again, because the dead cannot speak. However, the girl sits in front of him and tells him to consider himself lucky. She explains that her fist missed because her right leg wouldn't move. The boy starts screaming again, but she tells him to shut up because she has a splitting headache. He finds himself tied up and, in a panic, asks why she did it and what she was planning. The girl replies that she should be asking questions and demands to know what he did with her body. She clenches her fist and threatens that next time she will definitely not miss. She says she thought he was a psychopathic pervert at first, but judging by his house, he's just a poor guy. She is shocked to realize what happened and asks if this means that she really died then. Thanking him for his revival, she is about to leave and never meet again, but he shouts after her. He stops her, reminding her that her left arm and right leg, which were not hers in life, do not move. The young man offers her his help, because as a necromancer he can deal with this. He claims that no matter how strong she is, without him, she is helpless. In response, she grabs the cleaver he was holding earlier. The girl cuts off her non-functioning leg, declaring that she is the strongest, most beautiful, and best warrior in this world. She firmly says that she does not need his help, no matter whether she has hands or not. He calmly replies that she was a mercenary and fought for money, and since she sold her body after death, it means she really needs the money. He offers her a deal, promising to pay if she fights him. She finds him interesting and agrees, saying that she will kill anyone and accept any fight if he pays well. The girl explains that she has a debt that needs to be repaid, and he has no idea how huge it is. She stunnedly names the amount of her debt: 800 billion gold. The guy asks if this amount is enough for her, but the girl doubts that he has that kind of money. And then he mentions the Battle of the Necromancers. He unrolls a scroll announcing a tournament with a prize pool of 100 billion gold. The girl is amazed by the size of the prize, and the guy explains that this is the most popular sport in the world. She admits that she has no talent for necromancy, so she does not even try to participate in such things. The guy sees her interest and says that it will be easy for her, as an undead knight, to get into the tournament if she hides that she is alive. He confidently states that with her on the team, victory will not be difficult. With a crazy smile, he looks forward to the whole world applauding them. The girl doesn't care about fame, and she immediately demands 80% of the winnings, which confuses the guy. He tries to object by mentioning expenses, but she adamantly raises her share to 85%, and then to 95%. He tries to bargain, offering 90 and 92%, but she stands firm at 95%. He finally gives in and agrees to 95%, and she assures him that he won't regret it. She demands to sign a contract first because she doesn't take anyone's word for it. They practice outside, and she advises him to move slower, but he finds it difficult. The guy asks about her strange mask, and she explains the rule that 80% of her face must be hidden. He sternly reminds her that no one should know that she is alive and asks her to be careful. He tries to remove her mask, saying that it is a shame to hide such a face, but she sharply pushes his hand away. Suddenly, their longtime enemy appears and threatens to turn the guy into trash. She asks what's going on, but the guy asks her not to interfere, intending to figure it out himself. The stranger notices her armor and mockingly congratulates the boy on finally achieving success after 10 years of suffering. The villain decides it will be more fun to watch them lose, at which point the guy quietly calls him a rat pimple. The insult reaches the offender, and the girl reproaches the guy, but he replies that it simply irritated him. The guy cheekily confirms that it was he who said it, and again calls his opponent a rat pimple. In a rage, the enemy shouts that he will kill him and sets his monster on them. The guy calmly gives the command, and the girl, placing her right foot straight, prepares to strike. She delivers a powerful blow from below, completely destroying the attacking monster's leg. The narrator introduces a woman named Kalina, who was a very talented person. Despite her talents, she did not put much effort into achieving results and looked down on others, calling them weaklings. She screamed madly that she was achieving success half-heartedly, while others could not achieve the same even with hard work. Her favorite pastime was belittling the efforts of others and praising her own superiority. The hard-training boy, who always remained weaker than her, was the perfect victim for Kalina to mock. In the present, a powerful blow from the girl knight shatters Kalina's monster into pieces. Kalina is shocked and can't believe that her creation was destroyed in one blow, and on the orders of someone she considered a non-entity. The guy turns to her and asks with a smirk if she has any objections. Later, he scolds the girl, shouting that fighting outside the tournament is prohibited. But she doesn't seem to care. She leans towards his face and, with glowing eyes, asks menacingly if he is giving her orders. He replies that this is not an order, but a request, and claims that he understands the rules of necromancer battle better than she does. The guy reminds her of duty and senseless risk, after which she reluctantly agrees to try to restrain herself. She asks about their next plans, and he replies that they now need to register and take some basic tests. During check-in, the employee dubiously asks the guy if he can even run, which irritates him. The officer lets them through, and the armored girl awkwardly walks forward while the guy watches her. 3 judges in skeleton masks discuss her awkward gait, but it's good enough for the lower echelon and stamp her name. A red stamp with the words "Approved" appears on the document with the guy's photograph. The guy in the new uniform joyfully exclaims that he has been waiting for this moment for 17 years, and it brings him to tears. The girl sits, pointing her finger at him, and irritably asks when he will finally start matching his step to hers. She threatens that if he continues to move so awkwardly, she will have to cut off his leg and fight on one. The wide-eyed guy says she can't beat them on one leg. She screams furiously at him to finally get into rhythm because he keeps throwing off the rhythm. He yells back that it's not his body and asks if she even tried to move in time with him. The girl indignantly shouts that he should adapt to her and begins to say her name. Suddenly, the announcement of the opening ceremony is heard, calling all participants to enter the arena. She calms down, says they will talk later, and tells him to put on his armor, which should be closed, to which he quietly curses. Other hooded participants gather around them, including creepy creatures with multiple eyes and masks. The guy says their number is 7,508, and they head to their place. Someone in the crowd notices them and tells his companion that there is some strange guy behind them with something coming out of his mouth. The guy hisses at her, calling on her to stop her hysteria and look straight ahead. Otherwise, they will be finished. Meanwhile, the mysterious man in the hat reasons that the human flesh is weak, but his name can remain in memory for centuries. He says that someone lives forever, and he sincerely hopes that in this war of the dead, someone will appear who will be able to achieve this. The man in the skull mask and sinister grin clasps his hands, repeating that he hopes so. He addresses all 8,304 great necromancers now standing in the arena. He asks if they are ready to fight this merciless battle, and the crowd cheers in response. The host asks if they are ready to give their hearts and leave a mark on history so that the world will remember their victory forever. He calls upon them to do so, and the participants raise their fists, surrounded by a glow of magical energy. He then announces the first stage of the selection trials, in which they will eliminate approximately 20% of the fighters. With a creepy smile, he announces that the selection will be held in the format of random fights. A win in 2 fights means progression, while 4 losses lead to elimination. The participants discuss the rules, understanding that 2 victories are enough to qualify, and that a maximum of 5 fights will be required. One of the participants, who looks like an ugly boy, is delighted to notice that his first opponent is such a young and cute guy. He rubs his hands in anticipation and offers to show his opponent the greatest creation of his art. He claims to know this look and accuses his opponent of considering it disgusting and ugly. He shouts that they are all the same, but they admit they are wrong when they see the absolute beauty he has created. The guy calmly replies that he was not looking at him, but at his knight, who looks quite good. Behind the ugly participant, his amphibious knight appears, who analyzes Eleanor's body, noting how skillfully the weakness of her muscles is compensated. The protagonist extends his hand for a handshake and says that he will win either way, but suggests that they both give it their all. His opponent recoils in shock, muttering that this is the first time a man has ever shaken his hand. He can't believe that he didn't care at all about his appearance. Inspired by this, he decides that they have an obligation to show this boy the absolute beauty they have created. The qualifying stage begins, which will take place in 3 rounds, after which only 1,000 participants will remain. These participants will be selected for the final round. The guy explains that the rules of the tour are constantly changing, But the format of 2 wins to advance and 4 losses to be eliminated sounds pretty simple. The boy shows Eleanor a small skull earring and asks what it is. She explains that it is a magical communicator that allows one to hear each other at a distance of up to 300 meters. The guy, who has already put on the earring, irritably asks her to stop, because he sold a lot of things for this purchase and is afraid of losing it. Eleanor reassures him, explaining that in this competition, which highlights the uniqueness of necromancers, accessories are free to use. However, she adds that the arena is under the influence of a powerful magic circle that prevents any magical communication. The guy counters that they don't need to communicate with anyone outside, so it's not a problem. Eleanor agrees that he is right, and he, anticipating the fight, asks if she is ready. The masked organizer announces that the battle is about to begin and asks him to enter the arena. Entering the arena, he regretfully notices that no one came to watch the fight of the unpopular participant. The referee confirms the readiness of both fighters and announces the first match of the qualifying round between participants Us and Woon. He waves his hand and shouts loudly that the fight begins right now. The boy calls on Eleanor to show the world their power, and she immediately rushes forward. They immediately start arguing through the communicator, since the guy asked her to move slower, and she thinks that he is in a hurry. Eleanor calls him a bore and declares that she will move in her own way, and all he can do is follow her. She dodges the attack of a huge amphibian, which, despite its size, jumps very high. The guy reminds her that in this battle she needs to destroy the enemy's core and protect her own. He believes they have a powerful punch but too few defenses. Eleanor objects that they can't waste time studying attacks because it's not beneficial for them. She decides to go ahead and shouts that she will continue to close the distance. The guy understands that she is not going to cooperate and is worried, because due to her limited body, she is slow and predictable. He is more concerned about the behavior of the enemy, who does not attack, but only runs away. Suddenly, their opponent, sitting on a bone throne, begins to laugh evilly and tease them. He says he watched them hoping to see a strong opponent, but they did not live up to his expectations. He declares that he will end this battle right now and calls on them to tremble. His creation appears before them, which he calls true beauty. Eleanor is surprised because, according to the rules, 80% of a knight's face must be covered, and this is clearly not an ordinary face. The enemy proudly declares that this face is the embodiment of beauty, which he has worked on all his life. He explains that this is not the face of someone from this world, so the rules do not apply to it. Then, in a frenzy, he orders his creation to explode. The boy, in horror, shouts at Eleanor to be careful. The face projectile detaches from the amphibian's body and flies straight at Eleanor, firing a red beam from its back. She blocks the blow, but at the cost of her hand, and the guy warns that another such collision will be their last. The guy explains that the severed body part cannot be controlled and can only remain alive for a short time. He concludes that a necessary condition for the launch of this bomb is a straight trajectory. He also guesses that the explosives are made from the enzymes of poisonous amphibians and only detonate with a strong impact. This means that the projectiles can simply be deflected, which Eleanor demonstrates by hitting the flying face. The shell explodes to the side, and the guy concludes that they just need to dodge it. Eleanor chuckles, saying it's funny and she hasn't felt her blood boil in a long time. She enthusiastically kicks away another projectile and promises to kick her opponent's ass. The enemy laughs maliciously again, confident that with a knight who cannot move properly, they will not be able to dodge for long. The enemy, smiling madly, orders everyone to bow to his creation and fall before him. Eleanor is struggling to stay on her feet, and her partner warns that they are almost at their limit and will not be able to win if she cannot move. Her partner says he analyzed the reason for their desynchronization and came to the conclusion that the main problem is a lack of trust. He explains that because she has a right leg, even if it's not her real one, she unconsciously puts her weight on it. The guy yells that she needs to trust him and ignore her leg, but Eleanor is hesitant. She asks why she should trust him, since the only thing he does in this battle is move his fingers while she fights. Eleanor sees no point in trusting someone who doesn't risk their life with her. She understands that this is her last chance too, and she resolutely rushes forward. Then the guy starts telling how he was born in a disgusting dump that everyone hated and suffered neglect from his father all his life. His father considered him a scumbag, unworthy of respect. He clasps his hands and says that no one will understand how humiliating it is to realize that every part of you is made up of useless trash. Therefore, He could not live if he had not forced the whole world and the man who despised him. Recognize him as the best, and he could not live if he had not achieved this. Meeting her is his last chance, and he asks her to believe not in him, but in his desperate desire. At this moment, another projectile head approaches Eleanor. She trusts him and, taking a step, successfully dodges the attack. The guy joyfully shouts that she just ran away and trusted him. Eleanor tells him not to be mistaken, because she doesn't care whether he told the truth about his past or not. She reminds him that he has saved her twice already, and says that she is counting on his determination, which she noticed at that moment. As she continues to run, she thinks that they are still far from ideal. The partner replies that it is not so important, because if they run at least like this, it will be much easier to dodge. He says that there are less than half of the bombs left, and without them, the enemy will become an ordinary large toad, and then they will attack. Eleanor continues to dodge the exploding projectiles that the toad fires one after another. She dodges the last projectile and screams that it was the last bomb. Eleanor screams that she is attacking and rushes towards the disarmed toad. She stops abruptly and, concentrating red energy in her hand, says that now they will see who wins. The enemy laughs maliciously, declaring that they underestimated him because he hid 10 spare bombs inside the toad's body. New bombs fly out of the toad, and their creator confidently proclaims that victory will be his. Suddenly, the guy yells at Eleanor to hit down instead of up. Their enemy asks in horror what this monstrous explosion is, because it does not look like his attack. Eleanor explains that she figured out how, with the destructive force of her fist, the earth fragments from the shockwave could fly into the bombs and destroy them. Her partner admits that it was a game of luck, as he was unaware of her high skill, but then asks if she remembers this technique. In a flashback, he asks her if she can only use this technique once. Eleanor confirms that the essence of the technique is to concentrate all of her strength into her fist, which is why after one use her hand turns completely black. She adds that it will take her about 4 hours to recover her hand. The boy realizes that they can only use this technique once per battle and asks what will happen if she uses it again. She recalls that she once actually struck twice in a row, but her corpse was missing an arm and a leg, and instead of a heart, there was a huge hole in her chest. She concludes that her body cannot withstand repeated use. Her heart explodes and she dies. The man in the cloak states that reuse is out of the question, but they have no other options. His fighter, a girl with white hair, stands in front of a toad-like monster, and her opponent is in the same situation. The girl decides that the time has come to shed blood in close combat. Like true warriors, she delivers a crushing blow with force straight into the monster's body. The referee in the skull mask announces that the opponent's core has been destroyed. The man in the cloak clenches his fists and shouts joyfully that they did it. He enthusiastically praises the girl, Eleanor, saying that she fought simply amazingly. He continues to praise her, claiming that she is an unrivaled warrior. Eleanor replies with surprise that he turned out to be not so bad. The man leaves, muttering that everything was perfect, but then looks back into the room with concern. He sees another man mourning the defeated monster, calling it his beautiful work of art. The monster's creator asks the man if he really thinks his knight is cool, and he confirms that he was a fine knight. However, he adds that his own knight turned out to be slightly more ideal than the ugly creation of his interlocutor. The monster's creator is touched because he is being told such words for the first time. But the man notices one flaw. He believes that the creator was too fixated on pleasing everyone when creating this face. The man invites him to show the world the beauty that corresponds to his own ideals, without regard for others. The creator is delighted with this wonderful idea and says that he never thought of such a thing. He confirms that his name is Us, and the man promises to become his first fan. Us enthusiastically swears that he will create even more perfect beauty and surprise this world. Returning to Eleanor, the man explains that he shortened her name because it was too long. Eleanor furiously shouts that since when have they been friends, and that no one has ever called her that. He asks her to calm down and think, because in a situation where every second counts, something is better. He convinces her that winning is much more important than worrying about appeals. Eleanor reluctantly agrees, but asks that she be called that only in the arena. She asks when their next battle is, and he replies that there is a week between battles. The problem is that the opponent is chosen randomly, and he shows her a skull. This skull is an identification card that proves that he is a necromancer. Based on the results of tournaments, a skull of a different color is awarded, and his is currently black, rank 7, the lowest. He shows her the entire ranking system from bronze to opal, which is what the champion receives. Eleanor understands that the higher the rank, the stronger the opponent, but the selection is random. The man warns that if luck is not on their side, the enemy may turn out to be a second-rank fighter. Eleanor is worried because they have not yet learned to synchronize their movements properly. He opens the envelope to see who their next opponent is. Meanwhile, the assistant reports to the champion that she has not found any information about USA, and this is his first participation. A champion named Ral decides that the qualifying round will be very easy. In the huge arena, Ral, the indestructible wall, wins another victory. The spectators are delighted as he becomes champion for the second time in a row after a fierce fight. Numerous fans chant Ral's name, sharing this glorious moment with him. Later, Ral sits alone at a richly laid table and quietly says Sophie's name. Sophie appears, and Mr. Ral asks her how many fan letters she has received this month. Sophie reports that she has received 1,244 fan letters this month. Ral notes with disappointment that the number of letters has dropped by 15% compared to last year. He understands that the data on the loss of popularity turned out to be correct, because numbers don't lie. Ral asks Sophie what his chances of winning are, according to the estimates of 13 media outlets and 43 analysts. He slams the table in anger, realizing that they all think he is incapable of winning. Ral vows to show everyone that he is still not broken. He asks about his next opponent, named Us, but Sophie replies that there is no information about him, as he is a newbie. Ral confidently states that in 99.74% of cases, newcomers could not resist his technique. He intends to demonstrate such superiority that no one will be able to dispute it. Meanwhile, his opponent Us, working on his knight, notes that Ral cannot be ignored, since he took 10th place last year. Us recalls that before this, Ral had become a champion twice, and was a true master among masters. He explains to his knight that in a necromancer battle there are two ways to win, and the first is to destroy the enemy's scarlet bead. The second way, he says, is to force the opponent to surrender. He clarifies that capitulation does not simply mean an admission of defeat, but a complete refusal to further participate in the battle of the necromancers. In this case, only the results of previous matches are kept, but the participant is eliminated from the tournament and faces criticism. His knight realizes that this is an even crazier sport than it seems, because it all comes down to a fight for survival. Us says that even though a knight is considered a tool, if her heart breaks, it will be the end for her. She understands that this will mean her final death. When Us asks what she wants to do, the knight is outraged by his suggestion to surrender due to the enemy's strength. She claims that he underestimates her, because she has spent her entire life surviving in a world where she has to kill or be killed. She has no problem putting her life on the line twice to win. She defiantly orders Usu not to dare surrender without her permission. Us smiled, saying that this was exactly what he wanted to hear, because for him, this was also his last chance. He suggests that they prepare well for a battle that could be the last for both of them. Meanwhile, two cleaners at the arena are surprised by the noise that has arisen due to a regular qualifying round. One of them explains that Ral, a former champion whose fights were always exciting, is entering the arena. However, his comrade objects that things are different now, as Ral's skills have noticeably deteriorated. He predicts that Ral will remain a loser, forgotten by everyone. Ral suddenly appears and interrupts their conversation, saying that their words were too harsh. Left alone, he looks at his hand and repeats to himself over and over again that he can win. Ral enters the arena, and the commentators note that there are a lot of spectators, because he was once a champion. Addressing the crowd, he proclaims that the true measure of strength lies not in attack, but in defense. He assumes a defensive stance and declares himself the protector. He then puts his finger to his lips and asks everyone to remember his name. His opponent looks in amazement at the giant wall he has created from a multitude of materials and living beings. Us comments that until now, no one has been able to break through this wall with either physical or magical attacks. He tells his knight that they only have one chance, and they must find a way to attack what is inside the wall. The knight suggests that the wall is slow, but Us counters that that's not the scariest thing about it. He explains that the most terrifying thing about the wall is its overwhelming size, which does not prevent it from moving at tremendous speed. Barely dodging, the knight lands with the help of his new hook arm and admits that it has proven quite useful. Although this cable is made of cheap materials, It allows you to cover a distance of about 5 meters in an instant. When the opposing knight finally turned and showed his vulnerabilities, they had their chance. The girl wonders how long it will take for such a massive figure to turn back, and prepares to deliver the finishing blow. She understands that it is impossible to attack head-on, because no one has yet been able to break through this wall. Us watches what is happening in amazement, not understanding how this is possible. He sees the massive knight move in a completely unimaginable way and cannot believe his eyes. Controlling a knight is like tuning every tiny vein in someone else's body. When the calf muscle is tense and the Achilles tendon is stretched, it is necessary to control the muscles of the spine. The more moving parts there are and the larger they are, the more difficult it is to accomplish such a task. However, their opponent not only controls this massive body, but can also split it into parts and move them separately. Us has never seen Ral do this before, and knows he really has been preparing with all his might. Ral, with a furious expression on his face, declares that he will now show the power that everyone bows before. Us screams that Ral is going to surround her with a wall, and if she gets inside, it will all be over. The girl dodges the closing walls, but the rope flies past and she screams in despair, asking where he was even aiming. Us makes excuses that he can't see her well, but she hurries him, shouting that they're almost locked in. The second attempt is successful. The rope sticks into the wall, and the knight uses it to pull himself up. She understands that if they strike into the gap now, they will have a chance. Us is amazed by the incredible speed with which his opponent uses the arena space. She orders herself not to stop and to keep looking for the weak spot he must have. The knight continues to move rapidly without slowing down. She runs straight along the wall, but Us warns that they are about to be caught again. Rao mockingly asks if they really thought they could break through his wall with such a pitiful attack. While the girl is running along the wall, Us notices a gap on the right and shouts to her about it. They miss, and while the knight laments his failure, the enemy points out that there is no room on the left side either. Another miss. The girl falls, and the audience sighs in disappointment, realizing that nothing worked. Us screams in panic that the cable has broken and that now it will be difficult to get close to the enemy. In front of him stands an overwhelming wall that seems impossible to break down. But he is sure that there must be at least some way out, some weak point. Us says that they were wrong from the very beginning, because everyone fought, except for one condition that the girl does not know about. He looks at the wall and wonders if it is really indestructible. Us says they'll only have one chance, and while no one has ever managed to break through that wall, he's heard of someone who almost did it once. In the final battle, the knight who specialized in physical attacks managed to deliver the decisive blow, and a barely noticeable crack appeared on the wall. Of course, after this, no matter who tried, they couldn't even leave a scratch. So a direct blow was soon no longer considered a possible strategy. But Us suggests that if he strikes a blow greater than that of the knight, perhaps it will work. The only question was whether her fist would be strong enough to overcome that attack. The girl decides that if there is a chance, then why not put it all on the line? Us says that the main body is visible from here at about a 45-degree angle, and commands to attack as soon as he raises her left arm. At the same time, their opponent swings for a crushing blow. Rao can't believe they tried to fight the wall head-on, but still praises them for their courage. He decides it's time to end and says the name of his technique, space compression. Rao delivers a crushing blow, releasing a powerful stream of red energy. He recalls how he devoted himself entirely to his work. He sacrificed his youth and life to achieve his goal. The world has finally accepted him, but now he feels like a washed-up loser with only pride left. Critics and journalists constantly discuss his shortcomings and wait for him to retire. He coughs up blood but refuses to leave the stage in dismay and orders everyone to shut up. He dreams of hearing applause in his honor at least once more. In the present, his masked opponent breaks through his defense with a powerful blow. Observers are horrified to see that his impenetrable wall has been destroyed. The necromancer cannot believe what has happened and asks if they have really defeated the legendary Raal. The crowd erupts in applause, shouting that it was incredible. The spectators are delighted with the amazing battle, but no one knows who the winner is. He turns excitedly to Eleanor, asking if she heard the applause and praise. Eleanor replies that she doesn't care about the opinions of others, because the main thing is that she was able to prove her point. She declares with shining eyes that her fists are the strongest in the world. The necromancer enthusiastically agrees, because they have done what no one else could. He leaves dreaming of future glory, but Raoul notices that he looks very pleased. Raoul asks if he really thinks that he is now something, and that everyone will remember his name. He warns the boy to be careful because the crowd will admire not his efforts, but his mistakes. Raoul leaves, adding that the crowd will be more interested in his future failure than in his success. He turns around and asks if the necromancer is really ready to accept such applause. The necromancer confidently replies that he is ready, and Raoul smiles in surprise. Raoul promises that it won't be so easy to break through his wall the next time they meet. In the room, they discuss the reward for passing the first qualifying round, which became their second victory. He looks at the money and thinks that this is his first income as a recognized necromancer. Eleanor sarcastically notes the touching nature of the moment and announces that the second stage of the selection process will only take place in 4 weeks. She explains that according to the contract, the money belongs to him and he can spend it as he pleases. He asks about her plans, but Eleanor says she will have to stay here because of her terrible body. The necromancer suddenly stops her, asking her to wait a bit. She looks at her body in surprise, not understanding what is happening. He, already wearing an apron, asks her how the result is, admitting that although he tried, it didn't turn out perfect. He then hands her the box, saying he's not sure if it's an appropriate gift for her. He explains that the box contains everyday clothes, in which no one will recognize her as a knight. He smiles and invites her to put on these clothes and go spend the money they earned together. He says they earned them together, so they should enjoy them together. Eleanor looks at her hand and notices with a smile that he does have a sweet side. She asks him to step outside for a minute so she can change. Left alone, he remembers the applause and thinks how unforgettable it was. He is obsessed with the idea that if he wins, the whole world will applaud him. He turns around at the sound of the door opening and freezes in amazement when he sees Eleanor. Eleanor, looking at herself, says that this is a very old-fashioned outfit. She looks at her companion in surprise and asks what they should see in this city. Suddenly, she notices that the guy has blushed and asks if he was thinking about something strange. He directly answers that she is objectively very beautiful, so any man will feel attracted to her. Besides, according to him, she looks even more attractive in casual clothes. Eleanor screams in shock, asking if he has gone crazy and what this sudden confession is. He calmly explains that it was not a confession, and that he was simply objectively expressing his feelings from a biological point of view. She asks him if he ever had any friends, and he replies that he was ignored by everyone, and his only friends were cockroaches and worms. Sitting at a table in the tavern, he says that this is also his first time here, because he usually doesn't have enough money. He points to a wall of skulls, explaining that it is one of the popular spots in the necromancer city, and the skeletons are made from recycled materials. Eleanor asks in horror if these are real human skeletons and calls the creators sick. The waiter brings them the dish they ordered, called Dead Man's Tongue. Eleanor looks at the plate in amazement and asks if they are alive. The guy replies that no, it is a paste made from a unique ingredient called ghost potato, which has amazing powers of restoration. The starch of this potato contains ground basilisk eggshells, and due to the constant contraction and expansion, it looks alive. Eleanor remarks that he is very knowledgeable, and he replies that it is a famous dish that he has always dreamed of trying. He asks if she can taste it and offers her a taste, saying that the dish tastes best when it starts to move. She cautiously raises the fork to her mouth and swallows the piece. After chewing, she freezes with her mouth full and her eyes wide open in surprise. She admits that it's quite good and the texture is simply amazing. As she describes the delicate cream and rich garlic flavor, the guy begins to eat greedily. He shouts with his mouth full that it's damn delicious. Later on the street, they see a vendor offering to buy handmade cotton candy with a soul flavor. Looking up, they see a huge, shining golden statue. The guy explains that this is last year's winner, Kaylin Crow. At 19, she became the youngest winner in history. The winner is immortalized in the form of a huge statue in the central square, so that every visitor to the city can see it. He speaks with delight of how impressive it must be to be recognized by the whole world. Eleanor replies that not really, and asks why she would do that finger gesture at all. She suggests that it's just a show-off to look cool, but he denies it. He says the official name for this gesture is the absolute concentration stance. He can control simple movements of his arms and legs while remaining motionless. But for more complex movements, the most effective way is to take one pose and focus. He imagines that he is controlling a knight, and all control is concentrated in 2 fingers. So when he gets into this pose, it means he is ready for a serious fight. Eleanor says thoughtfully that it turns out there really is a reason. However, she immediately adds that it still looks crap. They watch a theatrical performance where an actor on stage proclaims himself the king of the dead. The guy jumps up from his seat and shouts how cool it is, and Eleanor asks him to be quieter. He loudly justifies himself that, of course, this is his first time here, since he has never had any money or friends. The guy shouts excitedly about how cool it is and asks Eleanor if she agrees with him. They continue to explore the city, examining majestic halls and eerie ritual cauldrons. 2 weeks later, Eleanor asks the guy about his impressions, and he is amazed at how huge this city is. She admits that she thought it was just a city of necromancers, but it turned out that it has its own culture and way of life. Eleanor turns to him and says that he turns out to be quite a funny guy, which leaves him puzzled. She explains that she has never met such a pure-hearted and slightly stupid person who expresses his feelings so openly. The guy replies that she is also unusual because although she says that she was a mercenary, there is nobility in her every action. He assumes that something happened to her before, but suddenly notices a familiar silhouette behind her and freezes in horror. It seems to him that she definitely died that time, and he screams in panic, asking how she could have survived. The girl he mistook for Eleanor also looks shocked and doesn't understand how this is possible. The guy curses, realizing that they miscalculated, because Eleanor is a famous mercenary, and someone could recognize her. He immediately tries to deny everything, declaring that he doesn't know any Eleanor, and that this girl is his younger sister. Eleanor says with irritation that they are completely different and calls him an idiot. The guy quickly corrects himself and, with a serious look, declares that this is his wife, named Sabrina. The stranger doubts, saying that although the hairstyle and complexion are slightly different, she knows for sure that it is Eleanor in front of her. The girl asks to see the rings, but the guy lies that they left them at home because they are afraid of losing them. He begins to talk about statistics, claiming that there are at least 10,000 people in the world with a similar appearance. The guy accuses her of being presumptuous, saying that from a logical point of view, she attaches too much importance to a simple coincidence. Then he suggests asking Sabrina herself if she recognizes this girl. The guy tells the stranger that she is mistaken, but she does not give in and asks to show her her fist. She explains that the Eleanor she knows must have a lot of calluses on her fists. Suddenly, the girl hits him in the face and then throws him back with a powerful kick. Eleanor yells at the guy for what he's doing, but he grabs her hand and drags her away, saying they had no choice. Once in a safe place, the boy asks who it was, and Eleanor replies that it was Naren, one of the mercenaries they worked with. She sighs that she was always a lot of trouble, and the guy asks why they competed. Eleanor, clutching her head, says that everything was the other way around, and she saved her life several times. And after that, Naren began to run after her like a fanatic in love. The guy tries to calm her down, but Eleanor interrupts him, shocking him with the news that this man is actually a man. She explains that she made it clear to him that nothing would work out between them, but she is sure that he would go to great lengths for her. Eleanor suggests that his very appearance in this city may mean that he has come in search of her body. The guy says thoughtfully that if this is true, then they will have a problem, because Naren knows what he looks like. He decides that in case something goes wrong, it's worth thinking about the worst-case scenario. But for now, he suggests not thinking about it and preparing for the next battle, because the second qualifying round will begin soon. Meanwhile, Naren stands in front of a wall covered with portraits of Eleanor, and with tears in his eyes, he rejoices that his heroine is alive. He remembers the strange guy next to her and wonders what he did to her. Naren swears that this time he is ready to sacrifice himself for her and will definitely save her. Elsewhere, some officials are discussing how overall revenue has fallen by 4.6% compared to last season. The boss asks about the main reason, and the masked subordinate replies that consumer habits have changed. He explains that the public's attention is focused on only a few popular personalities, so spectators only watch their matches and leave. As a result, people began to spend less time in the city. But he is interrupted by a guard, forbidding further entry. Suddenly, a boy in rags runs up to them, begging the chief to wait while the guards try to catch up with him. He desperately holds out the ugly rag doll and asks to look at the knight he has created. A tall man in a hat and mask asks what's wrong, and the boy explains that his ideal knight somehow failed the player registration. The boy haltingly justifies himself by saying that he constantly emphasized that the knight was standing in place for strategic reasons. He also claims that the knight is capable of attacking, and to prove it, he squeezes the doll, causing it to spit out a green circle. The head suddenly declares that he really sees no reason why he did not register, and admits that it was their mistake. He promises to provide information about compensation, and his assistant asks the boy to come with him. As they leave, the assistant starts laughing and says that with such a pathetic night, the boy won't even pass the qualifying round. The leader turns around abruptly and asks, with a threatening voice, who he is to decide this. He explains that by creating industry and culture, they directly influence the destinies of people. Anyone who allows himself to judge human value frivolously is not worthy to walk with them. And this is worth remembering. The leader smiles ominously under his mask and says that human greatness is born from hardship. That is why, having come close, he informs his subordinate that he is fired. Other employees are discussing the decision, noting that the fired employee had outstanding marketing skills. The leader replies that if a person really wants it, he will return. But if not, then his path is ended. He then orders the dismissal of the security guards who failed to perform their duties, and the transfer of the head of the second security department to the disciplinary committee. He orders everyone to gather in preparation for the second qualifying round, which will be held in a new format to increase the visibility of the participants. Suddenly, the scene changes, and someone's voice asks the young man if he seriously thinks he has achieved anything. A creepy, dark monster with red eyes appears behind the young man and calls him a worthless piece of shit. The monster continues to mock him, saying that it's time for him to realize that his mother was a worthless creature and the worst thing in this world. He screams that the child of such scum is the same trash, and no matter how hard he tries, he will still remain a disgusting bastard. The young man furiously shouts back that he is not trash and vows to become the best. He declares with determination that everyone will recognize him as the best, and he will prove to the whole world that the monster is wrong. The monster bursts into mad laughter and mockingly asks if he really believes he can. The young man wakes up in his room, breathing heavily after a nightmare. Suddenly, a girl with white hair appears in front of him and says that he has finally shown his true face. In a flashback to last night, he is kneeling before her, begging her to make him the best, so that everyone will recognize him. He cries and says in despair that otherwise, he will simply... Returning to the present, the girl asks if everything is okay, since his condition could interfere with the battle. But he does not remember last night. She gets angry and screams that he clung to her and cried like crazy. And doesn't he remember that? He asks in surprise who it is and waves her off, saying that she must have dreamed it. The young man urges her to pull herself together, because today the rules of the second qualifying round will be announced, and they must be ready for battle. Elsewhere, a black man looks at a map and asks incredulously if these are the rules for the second round of eliminations. The woman confirms that the announcement was official, and he notes that with this scenario, even the strongest players risk elimination. He squeezes the card, realizing that if he loses now, there will be no chance of a comeback. Another participant with white hair and yellow eyes smirks, finding the new rules amusing. The nightmare boy looks at the red card and curses, telling his companion that these rules are no good for them. He explains that there will be a 3-on-3 team battle, where the team that wins 2 out of 3 matches will win. The girl is worried because 3 people on one team puts them at a disadvantage, and there may be problems with communication. He agrees, but points out a strange condition. Only 1 player of gold rank or higher can be added to the team. The girl reasons that in this scenario, high-ranking participants will encounter each other more often. She is horrified to realize that the organizers are willing to sacrifice top participants for the sake of the team system. He confirms that it's strange and suggests that they want to increase the visibility of the newcomers, even if it means removing the strongest ones. She's interested in how teams are formed and assumes there will be a sea of people wanting to join a team with high-ranking members. He begins to explain the method, pointing to a crowd of people raising their hands and shouting proposals to unite. It turns out that everything is decided between the participants themselves. While they look at the huge crowd in front of a large building, the girl is surprised by the crowd, and he explains that they have 3 days to come to an agreement and create a team. To do this, you need to fill out a special form with signatures and submit it to the administration. She asks if he has thought about who to team up with, but he confidently replies that they need to wait a little, and he will approach them himself. She asks if they are going to team up with him, and the guy boastfully declares that they are the best in attack, with a penetrating shield. He says that they are the only ones, and if they unite, they will become invincible. Reasoning logically, he comes to the conclusion that that person will definitely choose him. He waves to someone, but receives no response and wonders why he hasn't been noticed. The next day, he waves his hand again, shouting Max's name. A black man named Max coldly replies that he hasn't sunk so low as to form a team with someone like him. After he refuses, the girl asks what their next option is, since there are 5 hours left, and if he has another plan. He falls into despair as he realizes that he has never made friends. The pocket watch shows that there are 3 hours and 30 minutes left to create teams. In the large hall, many people have gathered, trying to find a team, and someone is shouting that he can destroy lightning. Around 800 necromancers gathered in the central square, ready to compete with each other for a place on the team. As time was running out, the assembled participants had common traits, with most of them ranking between black and bronze. They had no obvious strengths, or they were simply unknown to anyone. One of the participants looks at the others with disdain, declaring that he cannot go along with such people because they have shortcomings in teamwork. An older man yells at a younger man, boasting of his 30 years of experience. But the younger man responds by mocking him by saying that in 30 years he has only achieved bronze. The protagonist clenches his fist and loudly declares that he will do what others could not, and asks if it is awesome. Several people look at him with bewilderment, and his companion covers her face with her hand in shame. The other participants recognize him as the guy who defeated Raoul and assume that it is time for Raoul to lose. The same guy who despised everyone wonders if he could break through his wall in such a state. Another participant runs up to the main character, delighted that he was able to break through the wall, and offers to join forces. But the hero asks about his knight. The guy shows off his boar-like knight and boasts that at top speed, it can pierce even a 5-meter-thick rock. The protagonist turns him down, saying that they are not really suited to each other, and advises him to look for someone else. Several players showed interest in us, but none of them were able to make a proper impression on him. Conversely, the members Usa was interested in were reluctant to team up with him because he was a newcomer with limited information. If he had a better sense of the situation and could adapt to the participants, it would have been much easier to put together a team. However, for Usa, who had never had any true companions, it was difficult to understand how to get along with others. The herald announces that there is 1 hour left, and those who do not have time to register their team will be considered to have refused to participate. His companion asks if he's gone crazy, because he's always weighing and evaluating things, but hasn't found a single person yet. She suggests just giving up and preparing for the next tournament, since this is only the second qualifying round. He objects that this won't work because it will be considered a refusal to participate. A refusal is not only a disgrace, but also a ban on participation for 10 years, which leaves the girl in shock. The masked woman says they don't have much time left, as their careers will be over in 10 years, and that the local rules are too strict. The guy suggests finding someone else first, but the woman reminds him that for them, defeat is not just a loss. He clarifies with horror on his face that this is, without exaggeration, death. He tells her that he doesn't want to lose her because of a rash choice. The woman suggests trying to choose from the available options, of which there are not many left. A guy calls out to 2 strangers and asks if they want to form a team. One of them, a guy with blue hair, introduces his knight, a deep-sea kraken. He explains that the kraken can blind enemies with ink, while the second knight creates interference and attacks with blood from a distance. The protagonist reflects that their knights specialize in defense and mass attacks, which is exactly what his team lacks. He also notes that their ranks are silver and bronze, and concludes that this is the best option. The blue-haired boy asks why they chose him, and he replies that it was because of his incredible attack power. The guy explains that they don't have a powerful single attack, so they need such a player, and extends his hand. The protagonist agrees and shakes his hand, and he, relieved, offers to discuss everything. An announcement is made that there are 20 minutes left until the end of registration. The host reminds that teams that do not register will be disqualified from participation. The protagonist corrects that the technique can be used once every 4 hours, but its power is definitely enough to destroy one knight. The blue-haired guy says worriedly that the risk is high, and if something goes wrong, they will have to cover for him. The protagonist assures that this technique is not their only advantage, since his knight also possesses outstanding physical abilities. His new ally agrees that such a powerful attack is attractive, and asks how they will coordinate their actions. A voice announces that there are 8 minutes left, and the hands on the pocket watch show 8 to 12. The blue-haired guy says they don't have much time and offers to fill out the paperwork, but immediately makes the reservation that the agreement isn't very smooth. Suddenly, the red-haired participant jumps up and shouts that he needs to go to the toilet. His partner tries to stop him, but he promises to go quickly and runs away. With 4 minutes left, the protagonist begins to panic and asks why he doesn't come back, since there is no time to find a new team member. The blue-haired boy looks up thoughtfully and also wonders why their comrade doesn't return. The protagonist jumps up from the table, realizing the deception and thinking that these bastards have set him up. He sees a red-haired guy next to another girl, who mockingly asks who would want to be on a team with such trash. The guy furiously shouts the girl's name, Kalina, and asks if those freaks were from her team. He guesses that they were stalling for time to stop him, but Kalina replies that this is simply a consequence of his weakness and incompetence. Kalina declares that he has failed and, reminding his new ally of the agreement, leaves, congratulating him on his success. As she leaves, she tells him that he was being arrogant, and that now she is pleased that he will be in the way. A masked woman contacts him through a transmitter and asks why he is running alone, since she can only hear his voice. He runs down the corridor, shouting that there is no time to explain, and he needs any remaining one. The guy desperately calls out to anyone who couldn't assemble a team and asks them to hurry up. Another person answers him from the shadows that he too is without a command, and the timer shows that there are 40 seconds left. The protagonist grabs the stranger and screams in despair that they need another person. Announcements count down the last 20 and 10 seconds until the end of registration. The man he found runs up to the registration desk at the last second and hands over a list of participants. The registrar says it was close, but they made it, and starts reading out the names. Gus, Bulmac. He calls out the final member, Ira, and announces that their team is registered. Bulmac, an elderly man, is outraged that he is being treated this way because he has been in this business for so many years. Gus apologizes to Ira for being too confused and not asking about her nights, and asks her to tell him how she usually fights. Gus tries to talk to the silent Ira, while Bulmac laments how this could have happened to him. Of the 8,304 necromancers, only a few passed the first selection. In the end, there were 5,005 participants left, not counting the former champion who is not participating in the selection. 1,668 teams were formed and they began their battles. Among all the participants, they turned out to be the ones that no one wanted to take on, and they were nicknamed the worst team. Gus reflects that all this happened not because of him or his skills, but because of a woman named Kalina, who ruined everything. Bulmac cheerfully declares that the others are lucky because they are now on a team with the great Bulmac. Gus asks if Bulmac has really been a bronze for 30 years, to which he is indignant that he was called uncle, since he is not even 50. Gus clarifies whether this means that in 30 years, Bulmac has never been able to qualify for the main tour. Bulmac shouts that he has much more experience in getting through the second qualifying round than they do. He confidently states that this time he will definitely make it to the finals and will provide them with valuable support as an experienced mentor. Gus interrupts him and coldly asks what about his knight, angering Bulmac. Bulmac introduces his secret weapon, the cockroach knight, which has absorbed his 30 years of experience. He says not to underestimate the cockroach, because it is the true embodiment of a persistent life. He explains that a cockroach can live without a head, eat anything, and cannot be crushed right away because it has no bones. Bulmac says tenderly that although no one would want to be a disgusting cockroach, he still survives. He asks with delight if it's not cool that the cockroach has such a stubborn will and vitality. Gus reflects thoughtfully that 30 years in bronze and not giving up is similar to the story of Bulmac himself. He notes that the knight is not bad. He has good overall balance and basic skills at a level. However, that's all. And this knight doesn't have any unique strengths. Gus decides to leave the discussion of strategy for later, and asks Ira to finally tell him about her knight. A huge black cat with large yellow eyes appears next to Ira and meows loudly. In the flashback, Kalina angrily yells at someone, not wanting to risk her life with a cockroach and a crazy cat, because she was promised a carefully assembled team. Gus says that now that everything has happened, blaming anyone is ineffective, and they only have 3 options. The first option is to win by being victorious, and the second is to die. The third option is to give up everything and surrender. Gus asks Kalina one last time what she wants. She resolutely replies that they have gone too far, and there is no turning back. So they will go to the end, no matter what happens. The host sincerely welcomes all spectators to the first match of the second qualifying round. He explains the rules by which 3 participants form a team, and the winner is the one who first achieves 2 victories in 3 battles. The host then announces that he will now introduce today's participants. He represents Team 1, consisting of Gus, Bulmac, and Ira, and their rivals, Team 2, Claude, Serena, and Bertor. One of the hooded rivals says that their art will continue and, throwing off his cloak, calls for preparations. Under the cloak is a muscular man who begins to warm up, counting 1, 2, 3. He smiles and says, "Well, let's get started." Gus looks at the ballerina-like knight Claude and thinks he looks quite strong. The masked Gus speaks quietly to his knight, afraid that they might be heard. He confirms that he can hear well, and that there are no problems with the device, after which he says that they have already discussed the initial strategy. Gus explains that his knight cockroach will go first because he is very fast. This will allow him to analyze the situation and understand how the enemy operates. The warrior in the horned helmet wonders what the crazy cat will be doing at this time. A black cat is comically lying on the floor, and one of her teammates asks her owner what her knight can do. A girl with blue hair shows a notebook with the inscription, "My cat is very cute," which leaves everyone in a stupor. The helmeted warrior comes to the conclusion that there are actually only 2 people in their team who are capable of fighting. Gus warns that in the worst case, they will have to fight 1 against 3. His helmeted companion says she sacrificed speed and chose a sword. She thinks this is a good choice, because once she uses her fist, her strength will be greatly reduced. The host loudly announces that the first battle of the second qualifying round has begun. One of the opponents, an elderly man with a mustache, shouts that now everyone will see the strength that he has been accumulating for 30 years. The helmeted warrior notes that he is faster than she thought, while the black cat lies on the ground and purrs. The enemy team leader says that music and lighting play an important role on stage. His partner announces the first composition for the opening scene, entitled Silent Choir, Tempo, Adagio. Their knight, resembling a musical instrument, is about to run his fingers along the string, as if along the ribs, producing harmonics. Another member of their team adjusts the main light, lifting 17 vertebrae and fixing the central point. His knight, in the form of a spinal column with an eye on top, provides contrast, and the leader announces the title of the first act, Prelude. He smiles ominously and explains that this is the time when they spy on each other's rhythms. Gus's older partner thinks that even though he suggested starting with reconnaissance, he needs to somehow maintain his authority as the elder. He decides that those in charge of music and lighting look defenseless and orders his knight to turn around. The cockroach rushes to attack, but his blow is suddenly parried. The leader of the opponents reproachfully says that it was rude, and now they need to focus on the main character of the scene. The helmeted warrior decides that she should get rid of this guy first and prepares for battle. She curses, realizing that his reflexes and reaction speed are significantly higher than hers. The bandaged opponent notes that she relies solely on her physical strength, while his ally has a much greater attack range. The warrior thinks that 1 blow will be enough for her to create at least 1 gap. An enemy knight, resembling a ballerina, unleashes a flurry of kicks on her. The older man is surprised that Cockroach is still moving, but Gus reminds him that he was talking about his vitality even without arms and legs. The old man explains that just before death, the cockroach secretes a maximum of octopamine, which instantly gives him incredible strength. At this moment, his speed is 10 times faster than normal, and he pounces on the enemy knight. The elderly partner shouts that now he will show them the last efforts of a living being. Gus asks doubtfully whether the speed is really 10 times greater than normal, and whether it can be noticed at all. His teammate confirms that with such speed, any physical attack can be avoided, and decides to get closer to create an opening. He orders Gus to attack with his knight. The man proudly declares that this is the fruit of his many years of work, a technique that will shake the whole world. He pompously shouts out the name of his technique, Death Destruction. However, the ballerina knight easily tears the cockroach to pieces. The older partner laughs nervously at first, and then realizes with horror that they are in deep shit. Gus angrily asks if he is mocking him, and if he has ever succeeded with this tactic. He dejectedly admits that no. But this time, he really thought that everything would work out. The masked guy says thoughtfully that, in theory, it would be a cool technique if you move so fast that the enemy doesn't have time to react. He adds that with such abilities, his partner wouldn't have been stuck in bronze for 30 years. and there's a reason why he's still there. Meanwhile, their opponent, a muscular man, asks them to understand that they are the villains here, and they should play this role properly. He hopes that the second act will be more dynamic, because only then will the main character of the scene be able to shine. After the word intermission, the monster appears and the villain announces that they will move to a faster tempo. The blue-haired girl notices that he is gradually increasing the tempo, moving from adagio to accelerando. The small instrument creature makes a do-done sound, warning you to pay attention to a particular note in the accelerando. A white-haired knight dodges a powerful blast of blue energy. He is thrown into the wall, but quickly recovers and prepares for the next attack. Suddenly, a flying mechanical eye appears above the knight and aims a red beam at him. The blindfolded man explains that as the rhythm increases, so does the intensity of passion. And this technique is called melting light. He clarifies that it works for a short time, but if exposed to light for more than 3 seconds, irreparable damage will occur. Smiling ominously, he finishes the thought by saying that the flesh will melt and disappear. The knight dodges the beam again, and another blue energy ball, which explodes with a loud bang. The elderly magician screams in panic that this is the end, and they are at a dead end. The knight realizes that if this continues, he will be unable to do anything and will die. So he needs to somehow create a variable. The masked guy advises him to use his fist and hit the ground at a 45-degree angle, asking him to trust him. The knight's hand fills with red energy, and he prepares to deliver a powerful blow to the ground. The opponents look at what is happening in shock, and one of them says in surprise that this is incredible power. The masked man explains that this technique is not explosive, but concentrates enormous force at the point of impact, making it difficult to cause direct damage. He adds that with such destructive force, it is possible to change the landscape, and the earth around it splits into huge blocks. The knight immediately uses the changed terrain to take cover and move between the debris. The main villain shouts to his assistants to quickly provide support, but his tool knight is stuck due to an obstacle. He shouts in rage that there is too little space here and they will not succeed. In response, the guy in the mask grins evilly and tells him not to make him laugh with his words about how they have no chance of winning. At that moment, the black fist smashes the small instrument creature into pieces. A huge monster in a bone mask appears and asks if they should start hunting the others. The explanation begins of what a knight is to a necromancer. For some, it is a lump of flesh assembled from various corpses, or a monster created as a weapon of war. But for this necromancer, his knight was a beautiful creature with beautiful and flawless legs. He tenderly holds the face of his creation and asks to let him shine on stage again, calling him my darling. Embracing the knight, he says that this is something more, like a reflection of his own soul, and announces the finale. After the destruction of his creation, the necromancer falls to his knees and cries out in despair that this is impossible and that such a thing simply cannot happen. 2 doctors check his condition and report that his life is not in danger. It is temporary shock, and the match continues. The blindfolded man tells his partner that their opponents have also lost most of their strength, so their chances of winning will increase. He says that he is raising his spine, and a creepy creature with a huge eye at the end of a bony spine appears from underground. He explains that it is through it that he observes the world. Seeing an approaching enemy, he calls a frontal attack without a weapon stupidity and utters the word dissolution. The spine creature shoots a red beam that hits the man running towards them. Suddenly, another knight appears and begins to spin rapidly, creating a protective vortex. The girl with blue hair declares that the tension of the string does not mean the beginning of the melody. The blue-haired girl screams that it's the end and activates an attack called Rupture. A huge pillar of light falls on the orange-haired knight, knocking her into the ground. Another knight inspects his damaged shield and finds it amusing. The guy in the mask with teeth decisively declares that he will continue in the same spirit and attack again. The orange-haired knight releases a powerful stream of blue energy towards the creature with the bell. At this time, the skeleton knight jumps and swings for a crushing blow, surrounded by a red aura. The blue-haired girl screams in panic that they are finished if the enemy gets any closer, and asks Bertor if he can still move. Her blindfolded partner replies that he has just regained his strength, and she suggests immobilizing the enemy. A huge stone hand tries to crush a small figure while the creature with the bell is attacked. A flying red eye on a chain fires a beam at the defeated creature, causing the man with the eye patch to become nervous. The red eye overloads and the head of the person it was chained to explodes. The girl says that a rupture has occurred and her limit has been raised, after which they wonder if the enemy is finished. From the rubble of the fallen creature emerges an unharmed female knight in a skull mask. She jumps off the destroyed stone hand and lands in the middle of the arena. The guy in the mask with teeth laughs quietly, watching what is happening. He stands before a cheering crowd, and their cries feel like holy water washing over his body. A guy named Us, with his fist raised, proclaims that everyone should remember his name because he will be the best. Later, Us angrily yells at the girl, accusing her of only getting in the way while others risk their lives. He tells the girl with light blue hair that if she had helped, everything would not have been so dangerous, and demands an explanation. Us, in anger, threatens to kill her if she does not explain herself. The girl silently writes on the sign that the cat doesn't listen to her. She explains that the cat's real owner is herself. Us explodes with anger, not understanding how she cannot be the master of the night she created. The girl calmly repeats that she is not the owner, but the cat is its own owner and does only what it wants. Us doesn't believe this nonsense and asks why the hell she's even participating in the battle of the necromancers. He understands that they won't come to an agreement and tells her to do as she wants. However, he warns that he is ready to die for victory, and if his knight dies because of her cat, there will be consequences. Us angrily declares that then it will be the end for both of them. He remembers the moment when he raised his fist and shouted his name to the crowd. Another necromancer recalls being certain of defeat, but Us somehow created an opportunity and was able to win. He looks at himself in the mirror and is surprised to notice how many wrinkles he has. A man walks through the city, thinking that creating a new knight will require a lot of money. After counting the remaining coins, he decides that he will have to economize greatly and eat only once a day. Walking down the street, he sees a vendor selling freshly prepared finger skewers. Returning home, he hears a surprised woman ask if he was serious about buying it again. She doesn't understand why he's spending money, but he replies that it's Dora's favorite treat and he couldn't pass it by. He assures her that there is nothing to worry about because his technique is almost perfected, and Dora exclaims with delight that finally. He explains that he managed to accumulate power, but everything exploded. And now he will use the principle of the cockroach, which presses the body. In the new version, it will make the body even more compressed, and in each joint it will create paths for relieving internal pressure. After some thought, he decides that it would be better to place the pressure relief channels not in the joints, but in the connections of the exoskeleton. A necromancer in a white cloak with a skull on the clasp shouts enthusiastically that this time he will definitely be able to succeed. He goes into a shop to see a girl he knows, who asks in surprise why he is looking at her like that. A girl named Bulmac says that she has noticed this for a long time, because he usually has a look like a dead fish. Whenever the conversation turns to the necromancer battle, his eyes light up, and he asks if he understands how cool it is, which makes him shudder. He sheepishly asks her not to say such things because he still lacks a lot. However, he then clenches his fists and confidently declares that this time, everything will be different. And if he succeeds, he will become famous. Bulmac encourages him, saying that he will succeed and that she is always rooting for him. Returning to his workshop, he convinces himself that he has succeeded this time and that everything will definitely go well. But then doubts overwhelm him, and with anxiety in his eyes, he asks himself if he will really succeed. He wonders at what point it became difficult for him to even imagine how he would succeed. It seems to him that even in his dreams, it is not he who is standing on stage under the applause, but someone else. He wonders if this time is really any different from the previous ones, or if he should give up. In despair, he thinks about what will be left in his life if he gives up now. He decides that this is not possible, because if he gives up everything, he will turn into a worthless person who has wasted 30 years senselessly. He sets to work, arguing that he cannot let the years he has invested in this matter go to waste. Elsewhere, a girl with long white-pink hair complains that all her hair has burned because of her eyes. Her black-haired companion replies that there is nothing wrong with her hair, and perhaps it is because the original is beautiful to begin with. He offers to trim her hair since he always cuts his own, to which she silently notes that his hair doesn't come out very nicely. He says that going to the hairdresser will be difficult and offers to just trim the ends a little, asking you to trust him, as you did during a fight. She closes her eyes with apprehension, but then opens them in panic, asking what is going on. and he reassures her that everything is under control. He shows her a mirror and asks if she likes it, but Eleanor silently looks at her reflection in horror. She bursts out screaming, asking what the hell that is, and claims he cut her like she'd been chewed by a rat. He looks at her in confusion and asks if this isn't similar to what it was before. Eleanor furiously explains that there was a straight line and all that was needed was to align it horizontally, not cut it like her hair. He says he'll fix it now, and she sighs, thinking that if it doesn't concern something he's interested in, that he won't remember anything at all. She yells at him, demanding that he cut his hair, even out the length. He answers with a tense face that he understands and asks to simply trust him while he sorts everything out. He cuts again and again, but each time he is dissatisfied with the result, muttering that he needs to trim the sides a little more. Eleanor screams hysterically, asking what is wrong with him and how is this even possible? And he apologizes guiltily. She declares that she has had enough and leaves, saying that if he doesn't know how to do it, then it's better not to take it on, and that she shouldn't have trusted him. As she sits down, he comes up behind her and she asks, frightened, what else he has planned. He announces with a mad grin that he has found a way and shows the organic glue that necromancers use to create armor. He explains that it turned out a little shorter and not quite perfect, but still pretty close. And there are still about 1,000 more strands to glue on. Eleanor, in shock, asks again about the thousands of strands and cannot believe that he spent the whole night adding thousands of hair extensions to her hair. She asks why he did it at all, and he simply replies that he told her to trust him. He says that they fight together, risking their lives, and he will definitely keep the promise he made to her. He then adds sincerely that no matter what hairstyle she has, it still won't be able to hide her beauty. She gets embarrassed and asks him not to say such things if he doesn't believe them. He continues to carefully glue her hair, and she, having calmed down, thinks that this time it turned out quite well. In the tavern, patrons discuss the recent battle, admiring the man who won a fight 3 against 1 and crushed the wall of the invincible Raal. One of the visitors asks in surprise about the Raal wall, and his interlocutor replies that this event has been discussed for a long time. Another man says thoughtfully that Raal is getting old and almost lost this time, so he wouldn't bet on him. His curly-haired friend enthusiastically counters that the fight was still cool, because that knight had an incredibly powerful blow. The thoughtful man remembers that the main material was a man with soft pink hair, and then immediately interrupts himself, exclaiming, "Just a minute." A girl suddenly appeared and loudly asked what the name of the necromancer they had just been talking about was. The man with the afro tries to remember the name and finally points to his interlocutor, remembering that the necromancer's name was Oos. The girl is surprised by such a funny name, but thanks for the information. When she leaves, one of the men asks if it was a woman or a man, but his friend remains silent. Left alone, the girl thinks that the warrior with pink hair is definitely Eleanor, but she doesn't understand what the necromancer's knight has to do with it. She remembers that Eleanor, whom she met, could speak, and decides to first find a necromancer named Oos. Meanwhile, in the tavern, one of the men notices that the girl who left was pretty, which causes confusion in his friend. Elsewhere, the necromancer tells Eleanor that there are 9 days left until the next battle, and in that time, they need to solve 2 major problems. First, he suggests coming up with a name for her technique, which puzzles Eleanor. She indignantly asks why such nonsense is important, and who will shout the name of the technique during the hunt. He explains that they fight in an arena, and technique is not just a technique, but a reflection of the essence of the fighter. The cooler the name of the technology, the more people will remember it. And in the future, it may even be given a nickname like Raal Iron Wall. He's thrilled to think how cool it will be if people remember who he is. He says he's already come up with a cool name, but Eleanor indifferently tells him to do as he pleases. Eleanor asks about the second problem, and the necromancer replies that even Raal couldn't stop her fist. Therefore, if they can get close and hit them well once, they will definitely win. However, he admits that knights are superior to human capabilities, and it will not be easy to strike an enemy with the advantage of speed. He says that so far they have managed to win by using the terrain, but relying on luck is too risky any longer. Therefore, what they most need is equipment that will allow them to quickly approach the enemy. Eleanor clarifies whether by technique he means pumping up the body, as was the case with her left arm. He confirms, but explains that the modification itself is incredibly complex, as what they did with the left hand was only basic actions. Real technology requires biological engineering, using materials from a specific creature. Eleanor is surprised by the time frame of several years, and he gives the example of a material like unicorn horn, which has telekinetic abilities. It took at least 5 years to complete the development of this material, and only 2 people were able to achieve success. He explains that once development is complete, recreation is no longer difficult. So necromancer knights rarely differ in form. However, they don't have the money, so they have to use cheap but powerful materials with high risk and high return. With these words, he takes the material he has chosen out of the drawer and shows it to Eleanor. Eleanor looks at the contents with disgust and asks what this abomination is. He replies that it is the leg of a creature called Deathgast, which she has never heard of. It is a species of insect that lives in a place called Black Mountain, in deep crevices filled with methane and hydrogen sulfide. As hatchlings, they grow quietly in pits, feeding on slimy mosses on bacterial colonies. But when they become adults, their organs begin to need oxygen, and they have to leave the pit to survive. Therefore, during adolescence, all accumulated nutrition goes towards the formation of legs, which they use, risking their lives. They need these legs to jump out of a hole that is several kilometers deep. Eleanor says thoughtfully that this is necessary for them to go on a journey and become adults. The necromancer confirms this and adds that the Deathgast can jump hundreds of meters, but its muscles are too stiff and unpredictable. The necromancer says that because of this, they are more often used not for the legs, but for strengthening or supporting the body. Moreover, due to the high difficulty of handling, this material is not particularly popular. But since the supply is stable, its price is relatively low. She doubts it and asks if, since it is so difficult to use, he can design and learn to operate it in 9 days. In response to her question about why he didn't start the project from the start, Us replies that he spent money on its creation and, due to its high complexity, considered it unnecessary. He recalls that at first it was difficult for them to even walk together. But now this ability is the key to their victory. Us, with shining eyes, asks to trust him, promising to show everything he has learned and accumulated over these 10 years. 5 days later, the exhausted necromancer despairingly admits that he is failing, and his work is just crap. Ira asks in surprise what it means that everything is covered, because he asked her to trust him. He realizes that the structure of the muscle fibers is not at all what he expected, and tries to collect his thoughts. Ira notices that lately he has been able to move her arm and leg naturally, as if they were his own. She notes that he does this without even looking, to which Us replies that he studied her every day. He begins to list that he knows every little thing about her. For example, when and how she smiles and all her habits. Us continues, saying that her left eyelid twitches when she's angry, and she taps her left heel 3 times when she remembers something. When he adds that before going to bed, she turns her back and picks her nose, Ira furiously screams at him to stop. The necromancer calmly says that this is not all, because he studied natural movements every day, relying only on weak electrical impulses. Without that level of effort, he says, he wouldn't have been able to become her perfect hands and feet. After a short pause, she asks if all this is just to win the battle of the necromancers. Us confirms this and adds that, if necessary, he will become her hands and feet and will be there until death. Ira looks at him silently and then tells him to do as he pleases. 4 days later, another participant, Bolmac, meets him and addresses him and his knight. Bolmac notices that something has changed and is shocked to recognize the knight's leg as a Deathgast. Us confirms this, and Bolmac, looking at the knight in surprise, says that it turned out awkwardly but very plausible. He replies that he finished only 30 minutes ago and only managed to conduct 1 successful test. Bolmac is inspired, declaring that he too cannot lose, and will show what the veteran is capable of. The start of the second match of the second qualifying round is announced in the arena, and Us mentally asks Ira if she is ready. She replies that, of course, but immediately doubts whether he can handle it, since their previous collaboration had been unstable. The masked mustache replies that there was too little time, but they only need to hold out a few more times. Ira hopes that their next opponent will be Kalina, but Us considers the likelihood of this too small. The host announces the members of the first team, Us, Ira, and Bolmac, and then moves on to the second team. Bolmac notices with surprise that those guys have a black rank. He speculates that the black rank means either necromancers without skills who didn't pass the first round, or truly strong beginners. Looking at the formless creature, Us doubts whether it can be called a knight at all, but comes to the conclusion that it looks like it. Their opponent turns out to be a spherical knight, whose shape makes it impossible to predict his methods of attack and defense. Us asks Bulmak to fight first, and he confidently agrees, promising to show him something really cool. The presenter in a skull mask announces the start of the second round of the second qualifying round. Bulmak furiously shouts the name of his attack, Death Dash. His opponent calmly analyzes the attack, noting that the trajectory of the left hand has shifted by about 2 degrees. He understands that the enemy has figured out his rotation radius and lured him into a trap, but promises not to get caught next time. Suddenly, a flashback is shown where someone is yelling at a white-haired necromancer, who, licking blood from his finger, declares his victory. He is happy that he won this time, but laments that the physical class has great limitations in team fights. The man in the white cloak walks away, wondering if he can do it, while the other warrior, perplexed, calls him a psycho. His companion with a mustache and tousled hair is sure that this time everything will be different, because he feels the power boiling within him. He declares with a wild look that he will show his true self and uses the death rush technique, summoning a huge red beetle. However, the summoned beetle is immediately cut into pieces by the swift attack. Meanwhile, their opponent, a hooded man, announces that the highest rank is the first to go and calls out the next one. In the arena, the masked warrior announces that she is reloading and will be using her legs, and her partner orders her to get ready. A man in a tooth-patterned mask points forward and yells at his partner to attack. The warrior misses, and her comrade encourages her, saying that she almost got it, and tells her to tighten her fist for the next try. He reflects on the progress towards the goal, which was like moving towards a dimly flickering point of light in deep darkness. The memory shows an exhausted man who carries endless worries on his back and struggles to keep his legs from falling. But he did not give up, and what was striving towards that point in the darkness was his will. Returning to the present, he decides to name this technique Point Break. He tells his partner not to relax, because there are still 2 opponents left. He thinks about his next opponent, but his vision suddenly becomes distorted and he starts sweating nervously. His partner screams in horror at what he is doing because he attacked her and decides that he must be killed. He comes to his senses and says that he knows what to do, because if they kill that guy, then the victory will be theirs. His face contorts into a mad grin again, and he obsessively repeats that if he kills just this guy, he will win. With strange symbols in his eyes, he whispers that he must win, and then shouts with delight, "Yes!" The mustachioed comrade grabs him and shouts at him to come to his senses, because he is not trying to kill an enemy. At this time, a giant black cat is holding their partner, and the mustachioed one is screaming for Whiskers to wake up, because he is their comrade. The mustachioed man understands that this is useless, since contact between participants is prohibited during the battle. He remembers that everything happened in an instant, and as soon as the battle began, the round night opened up like wings. From inside this night, a creepy creature jumped out, resembling a moth with many eyes. Soon after, Us lost his mind and began attacking his teammates. He guesses that this is a knight from the mental absorption category, who controls the mind by penetrating it without any conditions. The warrior held by the cat thinks that although she doesn't like the cat, she doesn't like it enough to kill it, and asks the idiot to wake up. She realizes that the cat's movements are stronger than she thought, and considers whether she should break his left arm to stop it. However, she decides that this cannot be done. Otherwise, the subsequent battle will become unprofitable, and does not know what to do. Usagi suggests that the mind-controlling knights are unable to perform complex manipulations. He decides that, be that as it may, it is enough to destroy only the performer of this ability. He sees that it will be difficult for the remaining 2 comrades to even escape, and he doubts whether to use Death Rush, fearing failure. He shouts to a girl named Ira that they have no other choice, and asks her to run away before it is too late. At that moment, the black cat strikes their masked partner. The warrior falls dead, and the cat's body begins to change and dissolve. The cat transforms, growing multiple yellow eyes on its back, and rushes straight towards the creepy moth knight. The mind-controlling knight sees the cat approaching and asks his comrades to cover him, as he cannot do anything while being absorbed. His partner replies that she will figure it out and tells Belladere to finish off the cockroach. The transformed cat pounces on the second enemy knight and tears him to pieces. The woman complains that the cat has a bad reaction and she can't grab it, but her leader says it doesn't matter. Meanwhile, Whiskers comes to his senses, and his mustachioed comrade asks what happened, shouting that he attacked his teammate. The mustachioed comrade shouts that their opponent, the knight, is mind-controlling and urges them to be careful. Us is horrified to realize that everything he had seen before was an illusion that he had failed to recognize. The enemy leader recognizes Usa as a serious opponent, but he confidently declares that the enemy will not have such an opportunity again. A knight named Eli finally comes to his senses, and his mistress says she is glad to hear his voice for the first time. The hooded enemy calmly states that all he needs to do is simply change the target of his attack. He directs his power at another knight, who looks like a huge plant with yellow eyes. A man in a plague doctor mask volunteers to deal with the situation, and when asked about the cockroach, he replies that it suddenly exploded and died. The mustachioed comrade falls to his knees, lamenting that he failed again, even though he gave it his all. The plague doctor threatens to tear the enemy to pieces, and his pet, a black cat, prepares to attack. A cat with many yellow eyes pounces on its opponent and pierces him. The enemy explains his mental absorption technique, which causes madness and makes everyone around him attack each other. He adds that this technique is only effective at close range and is useless in the current situation. The villain, with a grin, decides that it is time to change form. His insect knight transforms into a massive moth-like creature. The enemy leader orders a show of strength, and his new knight attacks Eli. Us wastes no time in using his attack called Point Break. Eli delivers a crushing blow to the moth creature, piercing it right through. Luden turns and leaves, but his comrade shouts to him that the battle is not over yet. The plague doctor begs him to return, claiming that they are close to victory and have a chance. Luden asks doubtfully about the victory and says that in the eyes of his partner, the enemies look different. He grins evilly, assuming that his comrade sees his opponents as nothing more than run-of-the-mill necromancers. Loudon declares that this game is lost and orders preparations for the next battle. He confidently states that thanks to this experience, he will not lose next time. The plague doctor gets angry and accuses Loudon of despising everyone, but he himself is the first to give in. He shouts that Loudon is wrong this time and vows to prove him right. Suddenly, he exclaims in shock, not understanding what an enemy with only half of his body left can do. Us realizes with horror that the black cat seems to have eaten all the enemy knights. The girl notices that the cat has acquired the wings and legs of an enemy knight, and the plague doctor suggests that it can absorb opponents. She says in bewilderment that she has never heard of such a thing, and from a biological point of view, it seems unrealistic. Us is stunned by what is happening, calling what he sees completely unfamiliar and creepy techniques. It turns out that the cat restored its damaged body by absorbing the enemy, which allows Ira to rebuild the knight in real time. Us looks at the blue-haired girl, Ira, and can't imagine what material this cat is made of. The plague doctor admits that they are losing, but he has managed to unleash all of the enemy's abilities. He says he wouldn't have confidence in anyone else, but he believes in her because she's always been the strongest among them. Sabrine responds that power cannot be hidden, and she will have to use the secret technique she was saving for the finale. She commands her enemies to tremble in fear of the death she has created, and creates a monster from many hands. After the battle, Us is greeted by a cheering crowd who shout that he was awesome. His knight says that they were able to win again, and suggests that they have come to understand each other better. Us thoughtfully replies that the opponents this time turned out to be very difficult, especially the one named Loudon. He recalls how he easily controlled the necromancer's mind, and then tried to change tactics by changing his shape. Us thinks his opponent is a damn capable guy, and they'll have to meet again to win, so he needs to be prepared. He turns to his silent companion and asks what she is thinking about, since she has not said a word from the very beginning. The girl suddenly asks what it is like to be a necromancer, and clarifies that she is interested in the very principle by which corpses can come to life and move. Us thoughtfully replies that the methods and rules of necromancy have long been studied, but the principle of its operation itself still remains an unexplored area. The girl compares this to the fact that people know about the sunrise and sunset, but do not understand how exactly it works. Us agrees that it is something like that, and asks what the question was about. And she asks in response if he wasn't confused by the cat's strange behavior. He admits that the cat's behavior was indeed strange, as her knight was a completely new type, capable of absorbing others and imitating their abilities. Essentially, this means that if you don't die, you can increase your power infinitely. The girl reminds him of his own words about a knight being just a mindlessly moving corpse. But she not only remembers the past, but can also speak. She asks in horror how this is possible, and what the chances are that someone else will face a similar situation. Us replies that he doesn't know and has never heard of such a case, after which he asks why she is suddenly so interested in it. She says that when that night absorbed her, strange sensations ran through her entire body, as if something was squeezing her very tightly. She felt like she was being taken apart piece by piece, and at that moment she clearly heard the voice of a cat in the darkness. She remembers with horror how it seemed as if someone was whispering it incessantly. Us believes that this can't be true, and suggests that her mind is also being controlled, but immediately rejects this thought. The girl suggests that maybe there is something wrong with this cat too, but their conversation is interrupted by a knock on the door. They are both surprised and wonder who could come here. There is another knock, and they look at the door in silence. Us says that you can't just walk into the waiting room and, opening the door, sees a girl with blonde hair behind it. He asks Ira why she is here since the competition is already over. He suspects that she has decided to attack him now, and is trying to figure out where her cat is hiding then. Us senses someone's presence outside the door, and decides that it is definitely a cat. Suddenly, a man in a party hat bursts into the room, introducing Ira as a young rising star among the necromancers and the crazy cat. The man thanks them, saying that he was able to pass the second qualifying round, and declares that this time he will definitely make it to the final. He confidently declares that this year everything will be different, because his intuition tells him that success is much more real than ever. Us turns to the man and asks if he is the one who brought Ira, and then asks why. He responds with surprise and suggests throwing a farewell party since they were friends, even if only for a short time. Us asks if Ira agreed to this, but the man replies that he doesn't know since she didn't answer him anything. He laughingly suggests that deep down she is also in anticipation, although Ira herself stands with a completely indifferent face. A huge black cat appears from behind the door and meows, causing Usa to flinch. Us, already wearing a cap, crosses his arms and says that they will meet as enemies anyway. So why attach importance to such things? The man agrees, but asks if he didn't have fun fighting together. Us admits that, perhaps because it had been a while since he had done anything with anyone, it turned out to be quite fun. The man sadly says that lately, while he was preparing for the battle of the necromancers, he had not had a single joyful moment. But being around such young geniuses, he himself seemed to feel younger and stronger. He suddenly jumps up and shouts that this time everything will be for real, and this is the year he will become the champion. Us coldly interrupts him, telling him not to talk nonsense because victory will be his. The man laughs loudly and offers to drink to the future champions. Us holds a glass with a sour face, wondering what could possibly be funny about this. While the men play the game Corpse Falls, Ira sits silently at the table and builds a tower of wooden blocks, which immediately collapses. Two men in caps celebrate Ira's latest loss, while she worriedly says that Us has already drunk too much and should stop. Us is indignant at how one can drink 18 glasses and remain unperturbed. The old man shouts that today's necromancers have no idea how easy their lives are, because in his time they had to sort worms by hand. Us jumps onto the cupboard and enthusiastically shouts that he can do anything. He can handle it and he will succeed. The old man looks at him sadly and asks if he really grew up eating garbage from the dump. Falling to the floor, Us confirms that he grew up picking up scraps and was despised his entire life. But that doesn't matter. He continues his drunken speech, claiming that only the man himself determines what he will become, and nothing else. The old man thoughtfully says that he has heard these words somewhere before, and then Us shouts out the name Raphael. Us enthusiastically declares that Raphael is the greatest necromancer, and he definitely wants to become the same person. Ira asks if he wants to become like Raphael, to which Us replies that it is obvious, since Raphael is the idol of all necromancers. Ira, holding some document in his hands, asks if he knows what happened to Raphael, which confuses Usa. Us asks what Raphael is doing now, and the old man assumes that he has made a lot of money and is living the high life. Us enthusiastically shouts that, of course, Raphael is an incredibly outstanding person. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a muscular man in a mask runs along the track, and his subordinates count down the seconds, shouting, "Chief!" A man falls off a treadmill, exhausted, and a voice announces that the total running time was 9 hours, 15 minutes, and 16 seconds. One of his subordinates says that the chief ran 3 seconds longer than last week, and he replies that he has become more perfect. The subordinate warns that if the chief continues to exceed his limits, he may die. The voiceover explains that the chief is a capable and cool-headed man who has turned the Battle of the Necromancers into the best entertainment in the world. Neither the age, nor the origin, nor even the name of the head are known to anyone. There is no information about him. He is like a shadow man under a wide-brimmed hat, impossible to sense. The chief's motives also remain unclear, and he asks his subordinate whether the information he brought is reliable. The leader grins maliciously and says that this is amazing, the most interesting competition of all that have taken place so far. He asks his assistant how preparations for the final qualifying round are progressing, and his assistant reports that they are in the final stages. The leader gives a speech, calling on them to fight with the readiness to die, and then the world will remember their victory forever. The final, third qualifying round is announced, against the backdrop of 3 skulls, 2 of which are crossed out. The total number of players who have reached this stage is 2,502 people. The young man explains that it is difficult to prepare for the qualifying round, so the best thing they can do is to increase their mobility. However, during the preparation process, one very important problem was discovered. There's an explosion and the guy screams, "Eleanor, are you okay?" Eleanor sits on the ground with her blown-up mechanical leg and curses, saying she used the previous version 7 times. She complains that this time the leg failed after only the 4th attempt, and the guy notes that constructing a leg with the help of Deathgast is not an easy task. He says that thanks to her, he figured out which parts need to be improved and suggests trying again. Eleanor runs again, leaving a blue trail behind her, and the guy counts this for the 6th time. She continues to run, and he announces for the 7th time. The guy shouts that this is the best result so far and encourages her to run again. And then he runs with a glowing leg. He catches Eleanor, who almost fell, and asks worriedly if she is okay and if she is injured. Eleanor responds by asking if he is okay, and says that he seems to have hurt his shoulder. He reassures her that it is just a dislocation that can be fixed, as this has happened many times before. The guy looks at her seriously and says that she is the most important thing to him now, and if she is safe, the rest is nothing. He notices that her body is overheated and she is flushed, but Eleanor yells at him to shut up because he is being too noisy. The guy explains that the creature Deathgast, having climbed out of the pit, immediately gets rid of its ineffective hind legs, which waste a lot of energy. The girl asks if these legs are only used once, and the guy confirms that this is why their durability is initially very low. He holds up 3 fingers and says that, based on experiments, it is safe to use them up to 3 times. However, after that, regardless of the number of attempts, they exploded at a random moment. The girl understands that there is a possibility of accidental breakage, but the guy advises to finish the battle within 3 uses, since the item is too good. She asks about the rules of the final qualifying round, but he doesn't know them, mentioning only one new restriction. The new restriction is that the knight's field size must be reduced to 5 meters or less. The girl is surprised because there were no restrictions for knights before, and assumes that they will have to fight in a confined space. Gathering with the rest of the participants, the masked guy assumes that the final stage will be a team battle. His attention is drawn to a huge red door, behind which, in his opinion, lies the key to this round. The leader asks the participants to leave their knights and follow the guide outside. The guy says he'll be back soon and asks to wait for him, after which he leaves with the crowd. Left alone in the crowd, he feels like a pathetic bastard and can't breathe. Insults ringing in his head, calling him a nasty guy and a real piece of shit. The voices continue to humiliate him, calling him a piece of trash and the scum of society that reeks of rot. Hearing himself called trash, he panics and tries to contact Eleanor. He realizes in horror that the connection has been broken and, clutching his throat, says that he cannot breathe. Suddenly, his friend Balak appears and joyfully greets him, saying that they will experience this moment together. Balak wonders what will happen in the final round, and suggests that this entire crowd will fight at the same time in a team fight. After filling out the data and agreeing to the terms and conditions, they are told to put on the items given to them. On his left hand is a magical artifact that shows the remaining distance and current rating. He doesn't understand what the distance and rating are for, but the guide explains that the device on his right hand is for safety. The presenter in the hat announces that this is a one-time magical device for instant travel. It is activated in an emergency, upon refusal to participate, or immediately after the end of a round. The device will instantly move them to a safe place prepared outside. The reason for issuing the devices is that the location of this round is extremely confined and dangerous. The presenter introduces the fierce battlefield where the final qualifying round will take place. Behind the door is a gigantic living creature, 9,999 meters long, personifying the underworld itself. The door opens to reveal a massive maw called the Guts of Hell, and the participants ask in horror what the hell it is. The protagonist, with wide eyes, realizes that this is not a mouth but a corridor. There is only one condition for completing the tour. You need to lead your knight to the finish line. The finish line is located in the depths of this hell, and the selection of participants will be in the order of arrival. There are 1,000 spots in total, and once they are full, the Guts of Hell will collapse, destroying all the knights inside. The presenter wishes that their determination and patience will help them in this hellish race. With a sinister smile, he announces that the race is about to begin. According to the rules of the final qualifying round, only the first 1,000 people will advance further. Participants must guide the knight to the finish line, which is located in the depths of this hellish creation. However, causing harm to another participant with the help of a knight or leaving the arena is considered an unwillingness to continue the competition, and it will be counted as a refusal to participate. Inside the Guts of Hell, numerous magical eye-shaped devices are installed that will monitor the condition of the participants. A mysterious host in a skull hat announces that the qualifying round, a death race in hell, will begin in exactly 1 minute. 2 hooded participants are surprised. One of them says that he has never heard of such a qualifying round in the form of a race. The guy in the mask with teeth understands that if they don't make it into the top 1,000, then only a necromancer will be able to return, and they will be disposed of. His skeletal companion thinks that if they don't succeed, he's finished. Another participant in a horned mask notes with interest that there are 40 seconds left, and it will be a race for life. The mustachioed man thanks his companions for their help on the last tour and promises to help them in any way he can. A guy in a mask with teeth warns him not to change his mind as a voice announces that there are 30 seconds left. The skeletal host announces the start of the final qualifying round of the Battle of Necromancers. Participants race on giant insects, dodging dark monsters. The mustachioed man carried by the protagonist admires the speed, saying that it is much faster than if he ran himself. The protagonist, holding him, asks him with a threatening look when he is going to demonstrate his experience. They fly inside the giant monster and check their ranking, which shows 873rd place. The mustachioed man shouts that they need to run as fast as they can to get into the top 1,000. Inside the monster, they see that the walls are made of living flesh with huge red eyes. The protagonist reflects that the walls really do seem alive, and is amazed by their colossal scale. His companion notices something strange ahead, resembling tongues. Suddenly, they fall down into a slippery tunnel. The protagonist realizes that they have entered the monster's esophagus, an endless vertical passage. The mustachioed man tries to grab onto it, but everything is terribly slippery due to the special obstacles installed. These obstacles, he explains, will at times hinder movement. If you get caught in a trap, you won't be able to move for 10 minutes, and during that time, the race will be over. Eli tells his companion that they need to stick together or else the tentacles will grab him and that will be the end of him. He hugs his comrade in the horned mask tightly. He complains that Eli is too close, but Eli replies that nothing can be done. Someone shouts to dodge to the left, and a huge red tentacle flies out of the wall. Eli, his eyes wide, barely manages to dodge the blow. He screams that there is another tentacle right in front of them, and they will not have time to separate. The next blow scatters them in different directions. The other 2 participants climb out of the slippery section, which they estimate was about 800 meters. One of them looks at his watch and sees that their current rating is 911. And they are already on the verge of elimination. Eli sees that they are falling behind and shouts at them to run faster. He asks the mustachioed man why their cockroach doesn't fly since it has wings. The mustachioed man replies that Eli himself cannot run at such a speed, so there is no need to be indignant. Suddenly, their friend Woon appears, who is glad to meet them and says that he has been rooting for them all this time. He shows his terrible face and says that he made it the most beautiful, as he was advised. Woon asks how they like his new face, which allowed him to come up here. Eli and the mustachioed man scream in horror at the sight. Woon chases after them, begging them not to run away and to take a good look at his beautiful face. They run away in panic, and Woon shouts after them to look at his masterpiece. Having pulled away, the mustachioed man says that it was a terrible monster, as if born in hell. To which Eli asks if he is talking about his face. Usagi admits that he really felt terrible, and that he himself was disgusted to watch it. Eli, whose face is hidden in shadow, says that his own face is extremely pitiful. Usagi looks at him in surprise and says that, in his opinion, Eli is quite handsome and does not understand why he hates himself so much. At this time, Woon, whom they left behind, shouts that everyone must see his beautiful creation. He continues to writhe and calls for everyone to look at him. Meanwhile, the group finds themselves in front of strange holes in the wall and doesn't know where to go. Eli looks at the clock showing their ratings are falling and says there is no time to choose. Usagi suggests choosing the most harmless-looking option. Elsewhere, a crowd of spectators watches the race on a big screen, which announces that Tarakan is in the lead, having covered 5 kilometers. The host, wearing a skull cap, declares that there is a real necromancer worthy of attention in this tournament, and not some bastard. In the control center, someone demands a close-up shot from camera 1488 as the leadership group dwindles. A staff member in a skull mask searches a list of parentless necromancers to find a participant with a touching story. He reports that the reaction to the round is positive, with newcomer coverage and audience engagement rates reaching target levels. However, he is concerned that there is too much luck involved in this race, and he is afraid of criticism from the media. His boss in the hat asks him if he really thinks he achieved his position solely through his own efforts. The employee replies that he has always done everything in his power, and therefore believes that he deserved to be here. The boss says that this is true, and that is why he put him next to him. But he himself is different. He states that the most important factor that allowed him to end up here was simple luck. The employee objects that he worked harder than everyone else, but the boss replies that thanks to luck, he has not yet contracted a fatal disease. He was lucky to be born in an era when his talent was in demand, and to meet people at the right time and in the right place who recognized him. He was lucky to have parents who helped him grow up, and that's the main reason he ended up here. The boss clenches his fist and says that he still wants to see a man possessed by desperate determination. According to him, such a lofty human aspiration is capable of overcoming it. He believes that this battle will be a stage for great men who are capable of bringing down those who have risen to the top only by luck. He is confident that the audience will be delighted by this madness. The group runs through the tunnel, and the mustachioed man shouts that the passage seems to be getting narrower. Eli asks if they will have to turn back, but the mustachioed man replies that they have gone too far, and everything will be lost. Ahead of them, a girl with her huge knight blocks their path and asks them to go back. She insistently repeats that they should go back and look for another passage. Usagi shouts that they can't go back because they've already walked 700 meters through this tunnel. Eli adds that they will lose twice as much time, and then they will definitely be thrown out of the competition. The girl gets angry and screams that it is impossible to go further. She explains that this is her last chance, which she has invested a lot of money and time into, and begs them to come back. Eli responds angrily, saying that while she talks about time and money, he has put his life on it. The mustachioed man declares that they will not return, and that she should work hard and clear the passage, to which the girl calls them bastards. The girl reminds them of the rule of the game, which states that they cannot intentionally harm a necromancer with the help of a knight. Her knight transforms, and she adds that this rule does not apply to fighting between knights themselves. She warns that if they lose their knight now, they will be thrown out of the arena. Suddenly, a knight with white hair appears and blocks the attack. The girl screams in shock that this can't be, and Eli says that her words are more about herself. He sees one of the participants being teleported out of the arena and realizes that the eliminated ones are being sent away from the same place. The masked character is concerned about the knight's condition, who reports that his steed is injured, but they can move on. He understands that since there were no restrictions, the fight between knights was permitted. This realization makes him think about the many variables that can arise during a competition. Ahead, they notice an exit from the cave, and the guy happily says that they won't have to go back. Once outside, he estimates that there are about 7,800 meters left, and hopes for a successful next section. They see a huge yellow lake with other participants floating on it, and realize that this is the next stage. He feels like someone is following the swimmers, but his companion considers this logical for the race, noting that they are still in 900th place. His partner urges him on, asking if he can swim, to which Us asks again, confused. Us admits that he has never swum, but is confident that if necessary, he will somehow manage. Encouraged by his words, his partner shouts for them to move forward and they jump down together. The mustache falls into the water with a loud splash and immediately begins to choke. His partner yells at him to stop being stupid and stay close if he can't swim. He tells Usu to just hold on to him with his left hand while he swims. The man teaches him to move his legs in the water, and Us replies with surprise that he seems to be able to do it. His partner praises him, saying that it is much more effective this way, and asks him to adapt to his movements as much as possible. Us remarks on how warm and cozy the water is, and suddenly realizes that he has never known a mother's embrace. He wonders if that's what it feels like as a skeleton looms behind him. The skeleton orders the jokes to stop, and the partner is glad that Us didn't drown, and apologizes for moving slowly due to the horse's wound. Us calms him down, and his companion is amazed at how spacious it is here. A man is discussing the strategic advantage of flight, but his speech is interrupted by a strange, gurgling sound. He feels something catch on his leg and looks into the water curiously. Something forcefully pulls him under the water, and he lets out a shrill cry of horror. The voiceover explains that this place is called the Stomach of Hell, and is an imitation that is incapable of digesting living beings. At the bottom of these waters live parasitic mermaids that wrap themselves around the legs of swimmers. The mermaids cling to anything that moves, interfering but not causing mortal harm, while the man desperately tries to fight them off. To safely escape from the hellish stomach, you need to overcome entire swarms of these creatures. His partner shouts that he needs to leave quickly, but Us doesn't understand where to run, because there's only water around. Us points to a molar-shaped stone where other people have gathered, suggesting it is a safe area. They swim with all their might towards the stone, escaping from the mermaids pursuing them. Having reached land, the man tries to shake off the last mermaid clinging to his leg. A guy from their team forcefully knocks the creature off his leg, indignantly asking if they have gone crazy. Us sarcastically asks how this can be called safe, since the slightest slowdown threatens death. He estimates that the exit is more than a kilometer away, and it will take hours to swim that distance, fighting with the fish. His partner looks at his watch in panic and sees that their ranking has dropped below 1,000th place as other groups move forward. Us is desperate to see that they are falling behind, and is frantically trying to figure out what they can do. He thinks about jumping over these teeth, but decides that it is too dangerous, because he will have to carry his knight in his arms. Then he comes up with the idea of using bait, forcing the necromancers to go into the water first. However, he understands that in this case he will have to fight, and making enemies is dangerous, and the bait will not last long. His rating continues to fall, and he wonders with horror whether this is how it will all end, with him falling to the very bottom. The terrifying shadow asks if he really thought he could do it and calls him a loser. His old companion is happy that everything is just honey, and the girl on the flying beast tells the fools who cannot fly to stay behind. A red-haired girl flashes through his mind, and he angrily realizes that she was on the same team as Kalina. The redhead sits on the beast and happily says that she lived a decent life, and that this is what luck she has had. Suddenly, another knight attacks them, shouting "What the hell?" and demanding that they get out. The masked guy addresses the attacker, calling him a fucking mouse and reminding him that combat between knights is not prohibited. The attacker grabs the red ball from his beast. The redhead screams for him to stop, and the guy in the mask orders him to take them to the exit. The knight screams in horror that they won't be able to fly with the extra weight, but the guy in the mask replies that then let them die, because he won't back down. The red-haired girl fearfully agrees, but says that she has a condition. He asks about the condition, reminding her that she is in no position to bargain. She states that in order to get out of here, he must follow her. The girl points to his companions and says that this won't work anymore, so he must go alone. The old man panics and shouts that he will definitely fail if he has to fight these fish. He pleads with the masked guy, saying that he is an old man. He does not have enough strength, and besides, he cannot even fly. The old man desperately asks to be taken with him, reminding him that he helped them get here, and that this time he simply must succeed. Redhead screams that nothing will work and rushes him because they keep falling in the rankings. The old man offers to take at least his body with him, because to win, the knight must cross the finish line. Crying, he begs not to let the 30 years he has wasted go to waste. The masked guy kicks the old man away and yells at the girl to come closer because he's about to jump. Having jumped on the beast, he hears from the girl a question whether he is worried about that old man, since she is helping him at a loss. She tells him not to worry because there is no such thing as comrades here, and in the end, everyone will meet as enemies. He orders her to shut up and fly straight ahead, adding that he is grateful to her only because he himself does not know when she will stab him in the back. The girl calls his words creepy, and he asks where Kalina is since they were in cahoots. She replies, surprised, that she herself doesn't know, since although they have known each other for a long time, they are not really that close. She explains that they are only dating for profit, and in general, Kalina is a little annoying. He says contemptuously that she simply associates with those who are beneficial to her and runs from one to another, just like a bat. She assumes he's still angry about last time, but reminds him that she's helping him now. The girl hugs him and says that now he is with such a sweet girl like her, so there is no need to be too offended. He rudely orders her to stop talking nonsense and look ahead, and she obediently agrees. He looks at his watch and notes that he was able to climb back up the rankings, as flying is the fastest way. The guy notices that there seem to be a lot of necromancers stuck in this area. Suddenly, their beast is grabbed by a purple hand with a tentacle, and the girl screams in horror. The necromancers and their monster are standing below and demanding that they be taken with them because they won't be able to swim and need to fly. The girl notes that this conversation is already familiar to her, and the guy in the mask shouts that the beast can only lift 200 kilograms. One of the necromancers suggests that the guy get off and then everything will be fine, to which he calls them bastards. At this moment, a knight with white hair appears and attacks the necromancer monster with blue flame. The white-haired knight continues to furiously attack the huge creature, dealing it blow after blow. The necromancer is surprised at first, but then grins evilly and prepares to show his power, shouting the name of the lightning palms technique. The necromancer's monster is suddenly grabbed by giant purple hands which tear it apart. The white-haired knight is entangled in tentacles, but he releases blue energy and strikes back. The man with the mohawk begs for another chance, admitting his guilt before the stone monster. He finds himself trapped in blue energy and screams for a chance, while the masked man advises him to watch who he's messing with first. The masked man extends his hand to the red-haired girl, asking if she is hurt, and urging her to hurry because they don't have much time. The three of them, along with their knight, arrive at a strange place that looks like a cave made of flesh, where someone is already waiting for them. The girl thanks the masked man for significantly increasing her rating and asks if he really is that strong. She happily introduces herself as Nia and invites him to be her friend. He calmly tells her to do as she pleases, but Nia insistently invites him to grab a bite to eat after the qualifying round at her expense. When Nia touches the knight, he suddenly grabs her hand, and the girl freezes in fear. The masked man screams in horror at his knight about what he is doing and demands that he immediately let go of the girl's hand so that they do not get disqualified. He pulls the knight away, asking what's wrong with him and warning him that harming a participant is dangerous and will result in their expulsion. The knight releases his hand and apologizes, explaining that it was a reflex due to a bad experience in the past. The man replies that everything is fine, and Nia curiously asks if his knight is really made of a material that imitates the human body. She notes that his eyes look alive and wonders how he managed to put emotion into them, guessing anger or confusion. Nia covers her mouth in shock, guessing it's jealousy, but at that moment a flying monster attacks them. The masked man shouts that now is not the time for conversation and rushes forward, with Nia running after him. He scolds his knight for his dangerous behavior, and he admits that he does not like the girl. The man asks in surprise if that is the whole reason, but the knight insists that he does not like her and asks him not to go to dinner with her. His owner replies that everything depends on the situation, and he is ready to do anything to win. The next challenge is announced, called the Lungs of Hell, where hellish bacteria live among the raging wind. These bacteria will hinder movement, and one of them will immediately crash into the face of one of the participants. The voiceover expresses hope that the participants will safely overcome the stormy wind that is blowing people away. Nia screams that the wind is too strong and she can't hold on any longer. The masked man picks her up and she screams in surprise, not understanding what he is doing. He explains that he will shield her from the wind, and she should concentrate on the knight's movements to make it easier to move. Nia agrees that it is much easier this way, but she is worried about him. But he reassures her, saying that she is light and he is used to the stress. He muses that the ability to fly is highly prized here, and they will need help if they encounter similarly challenging terrain. So he decides it would be more profitable to take her with him while there is a need, and Nia blushes in embarrassment. The knight easily fights off the spherical, spiky bacteria flying at them. They reach the end of the tunnel, and the man breathes a sigh of relief, assuming they've made it. Nia thanks him for his help, promising not to forget his kindness, but at the same time hopes that he will not stab her in the back. They look ahead and see a huge structure that looks like many vertical spines. The voice announces the final obstacle, which is called the Spine of Hell. Participants must climb a continuously running vertical spine to reach the exit. In case of a fall, soft Hellcat paw pads are installed below. As long as the participants have the strength to climb, they can try as many times as they want, so they are advised to be persistent. Nia excitedly says that it would be just super if they could fly over this section. The man tells her to climb onto his flying beast, confirming that they were right to take her along. He looks at his rating on the clock and thinks that due to the chaotic movement, it is constantly changing. But there is no need to worry yet. He is confident that there is very little time left to fly, and they will pass the qualifying round without any problems. Suddenly, an angry woman appears and screams about what the hell that bastard Us is doing here. He should have been thrown out. An enraged woman named Kalina screams at them to stop the bastard, but her partner warns them that they don't have much time. Kalina shouts in a rage that even if he flies out, he will never let this scoundrel, who has been different from the others since childhood, pass. She believes that this trash should be under her, no matter the cost. Kalina offers her partner 10 times more to get rid of Us, and he immediately agrees. Kalina's partner, Ethan, calls the girl by her name, Nia, indicating that Us is now their enemy. But he only smirks and asks what if he doesn't want to. Nia, with red hair, smiles and declares that it is more profitable for her to be on this side now. Ethan scolds him, saying that he thought Nia was like a bat. But it doesn't matter because they can't fly fast. He uses a technique that does no damage but blocks visibility for a range of 800 meters. Suddenly, a knight appears from the darkness and attacks, catching Us off guard. Ethan is shocked, because he does not understand how the enemy can see and control his knight in complete darkness. He admits that the enemy managed to dodge once. However, they are located hundreds of meters above the ground, and it will not be easy to deal with several opponents alone. Ethan orders Keisha to attack while he covers from behind, but he snaps back that he shouldn't be ordered. Keisha, the masked man, reflects that even though he joined them for the money, he is the strongest among them. He feels that the enemy is not an easy one, but there were several weak points in his recent attack. Keisha decides to take advantage of this and rushes into attack. The Whisker Knight dodges the blow and strikes back, surrounded by a flash of energy. The knight's powerful blow pierces the monster that Keisha was riding. However, the enemy knight begins to crumble into pieces, and Keisha is perplexed, because he has not done anything yet. Us explains that his knight Eleanor can move on her own, so the interference doesn't affect her, but she's already used jump 3 times. He adds that from now on, Eleanor's leg could explode, so she needs to be careful. Kalina is angry that this bastard was just showing off and didn't help in any way, and orders Adu to assess the situation and join her. A masked girl named Adu quickly attacks a purple monster. She moves with incredible speed, delivering multiple blows. Ethan screams in horror that the enemy has an overwhelming advantage, and they are losing by a huge margin. He understands that in a fight, the enemy is several steps ahead, and suggests surrendering in order not to be eliminated from the competition. Kalina screams in rage that this can't be, and refuses to believe that this bastard is better than her. She screams that she is a person superior to everyone and remembers her father's words. In the memories, the father shows little Kalina people living in the garbage and asks if they look like them. He explains that they are different because all people have levels in their blood that are given from birth and never change. Her father tells her that their blood rank is above all others and encourages her to live with pride in her superiority. From birth, Kalina was taught how excellent her bloodline was, and it became her greatest pride. It was this feeling of superiority that became the basis of her contempt for other people. However, at some point, her father's successful business began to fade, and the number of bathrooms in their house was reduced from 32 to 16. Then their number decreased from 16 to 6, and Kalina gradually began to feel anxious. Doubts began to overwhelm her, and she began to wonder if she really was a person superior to others. She realized that her father, whom she considered a superior being, actually came from the very lower class that she had always despised. She yelled at her father, accusing him of lying because he himself turned out to be the same pathetic person from whom he told her to be different. The father, covering his face, replied that it was precisely because they were different that they had reached this point, insisting on their uniqueness. He screamed in madness that he was not as worthless as his parents, those pathetic scum. Gradually, this anxiety turned into an obsession that began to strangle her from the inside. Kalina never gave it her all, because if the result was bad, it would prove that you were not a special person. She was afraid to face the truth, so she put in moderate efforts and then looked down on those who achieved even less. She laughed madly, shouting that she had succeeded without even trying, and that the rest would still fail even if they tried. In this way, she hid her insecurity and preserved the remnants of her pride, the one she despised and humiliated most. The man she considered the most insignificant defeated her. Now he's trying to stand on her head. The fact that she might not be the excellent person she had ignored for so long was beginning to be confirmed. A sudden blow cuts off the arm of the creature that steps on it. Kalina, shocked, asks why her savior didn't finish off the enemy. Because if he flies away now, he'll become just a bystander. But he wants her to look at him as an opponent fighting on the same field, and to be clearly aware of everything. She should have seen him rise above her and overtake her. He challenges her to a fight, asking if she wants to become an outstanding person. She asks if he wants to become so excellent and great that no one dares to ignore him because his pathetic nature is unbearable. She says that in order to achieve superiority, someone must end up on the bottom. At the root of any feeling of superiority is always contempt for others. And she asks if he really thinks he is different. He firmly replies that he is different from people like her. She screams that one of the reasons she doesn't like him is because of his ugly eyes. The girl says that he has the same eyes as her father. Hearing this, the guy silently jumps aside. She asks again, with a crazy grin, if he really thinks he's different. He shouts that he is different, and the world will soon recognize him as the most outstanding man of them all. The guy frantically declares that the world will definitely recognize this. The final part of the test, called Hell's Guts, begins. It's a 2-kilometer straight section that you have to run to reach the exit. The girl with red hair is surprised that 667 people have already passed. At this point, the number of those who have passed increases to 679. And she shouts that it has grown again. The masked guy realizes that he has wasted too much time fighting and is barely making it into the 1,000, so he needs to hurry. Participants panic and run towards the exit, pushing each other and shouting insults. Everyone rushes forward with shouts, using their maximum speed. The spider-like creature blocks the way, screaming for people to give way and not to dare overtake it. The protagonist gets caught in a web and screams in rage that he will finish off this fucking bastard. The red-haired girl also gets stuck and is indignant about why these idiots have such stupid rules that allow them to harm each other. A participant riding a spider orders the pathetic bugs not to block his path. Suddenly, a huge black cat appears and scares the impudent fellow with a loud meow. The masked guy recognizes the cat and asks Ira how many Hell Knights he's eaten so far. He begs Ira to pull him out of the web. The cat runs past, and the number of those who passed increases to 785 people. The girl asks him to free her too, but he replies that he doesn't have time to save her and shouts that they shouldn't abandon him. The number of those who have passed reaches 815, and the guy understands that they will not be able to catch up with the others by ordinary running, so they need to use a jump. The masked man says he's already used the jump 3 times, and now they'll have to rely on luck to get them across the remaining distance. An elderly man with disheveled hair hears from another participant that it's all over, and he will no longer catch up with the others. The old man clenches his fist and, not wanting to give up, begins to climb the huge bone staircase to prove his superiority. When the number of those who passed reached 840, the guy warns his companion that if he goes too far, their connection will be broken. He encourages his comrade, saying that as long as he has arms and legs, they will be tied up, and asks him to just trust him and run forward. The number of those who have passed increases to 850, and the creature in the bone mask tenses, preparing for a powerful leap. Enveloped in blue energy, he dashes forward, flying a great distance through the air. The guy asks Eli how he is, and he replies that everything is fine. It worked once, but he needs 2 more of the same jumps. When 874 people had already passed the test, the guy realized that he could no longer see his partner. He asks if they can handle it relying only on their feelings, and then remembers that they trained together for a long time. The guy confidently says that it's time to move on to the next push and orders Eli to get ready. Eli pushes off the ground again, and a powerful stream of blue energy propels him forward. The number of people who have passed reaches 900, And the girl with red hair sighs in disappointment that it is a failure after so much money was invested. Her companion consoles her, saying that getting to this stage on the first try is already amazing, and next time she will do even better. The girl happily agrees that she has learned a lot and will be able to grow even more next time. But the old man interrupts their conversation. He approaches them and asks how they can smile and talk about next time if they don't even know the most important thing. The old man screams in despair, asking if they know how many tries they have left. The guy in the white cloak angrily cuts him off, saying that this is nonsense, and asks if the old man really thinks that they are the same as him. In his memoirs, the little boy, being the same old man, says that he simply liked to be creative. That's why he became a necromancer, as can be seen from his reflection in the mirror in his new attire. He recalls that the first failure was painful, but not sad, because he believed that he could do better next time. So he held on, relying on a thin thread of hope and a gradually fading belief in himself that he would succeed next time. A day passes, then a month, and then a whole year, which is shown through the changing landscape outside the window of his workshop. 10 years later, looking back, he saw only fragments of the dream he once loved and now hated. He clutches his green, stitched-together hand, feeling only regret and attachment to the choices he made in the past. He wonders at what point everything went wrong and who is to blame, but decides that in this battle, he will be the only winner. He dismisses the idea that the necromancer who consoled him and told him not to give up is to blame, because that man did nothing wrong. Clutching his head, he understands that the mistake was that, despite not having talent, like a fool, he still could not retreat. He thought that if he gave it his all, he would at least become like that frog in the well. But it seems he is just a loser who doesn't even reach that level. Falling to his knees, he cries out in despair, asking why God gave him such a strong passion, but did not grant him talent. With tears in his eyes, he whispers that he wants to shine at least once. Just once. Just once. He shouts that he would do anything for this. The action returns to the present, where he continues to climb up to prove his superiority. Suddenly, the bone staircase flashes with a red light, and the girl asks in amazement what kind of light it is. At the same time, Eli makes a second successful dash and sees that now the exit is even visible. The masked man senses that the connection has been lost and sees another participant approaching his partner. A black man addresses someone, calling him that same Rawl, and asks with a grin how the winner could have fallen so far behind. The number of those who have passed reaches 983. And Eli decides that he does not have time to worry about the others. He understands that if he fails to make a breakthrough now, death awaits him, and he prepares to tempt fate. He and his mentor, their faces determined, make their final bet, testing their luck in a final push. A powerful blast of red energy shakes the arena, knocking back one of the fighters. The crowd watches the aftermath, as it all happened in the blink of an eye. An unknown fighter showed the world his final move, into which he put his all. The Cockroach Knight. Balak froze as soon as he crossed the finish line, and most of his body turned to dust. From his remains, burning the last sparks of passion, discharges of light continued to pour out. The crowd roared at his annihilation charge, and the world became interested in his story. So Balak, who had previously lost himself in the abyss of pain and fear, was tormented by the thought of the meaninglessness of life. Having completed his annihilating dash, he tasted true glory for the first time since his birth. He achieved greatness for a moment, proving his worth, but it did not bring him satisfaction. The path laid by the Cockroach Knight turned into hell due to the shockwaves from the unimaginable speed. Almost all the participants lost consciousness, but the judges decided that there was no malicious intent, and Balak moved on. When only 16 contenders remained out of 384, their battle was still going on. In such circumstances, fortitude was decisive, and the first to come to his senses was a fighter named Us. An ear-splitting ringing echoed in his head, but this pain was weaker than what he had known before. He remembered how, as a child, he was beaten by the neighboring children, who called him a disgusting bastard. That's why he could run even when everything was swimming before his eyes and the picture was shaking. This physical pain was more bearable than the disgusted looks people gave him, so he could run. His legs were unsteady, and he seemed about to fall, but he continued to move. He remembered his father, who blamed others for all his troubles and cursed his life. The father constantly cursed, hating everyone around him, including his own family. The shadow of his father, who always humiliated and insulted him, haunted us all his life. Because of these memories and the fear of his father, he simply did not dare stop. Meanwhile, Eleanor, left with only one leg, was also preparing to dash. While others were unconscious, she was able to pull ahead despite her injury. However, soon several fighters came to their senses and easily overtook the one-legged Eleanor. When 995 people had passed and there were still 5 left in front of us, the situation became critical. One of the opponents attacked the other, but suddenly a fighter named Yoon intervened in the fight. Thanks to Yoon's help, Woo gets through the qualifying round at number 997. Us didn't understand why Yoon, who was also his rival, decided to help him. Yoon explained that he had fought to create the most beautiful face, and now the battle was over for him. Now he wants to become USA's very first fan and root for him. He decided this because Us was the first one who, without any prejudice, simply shook his hand. Yoon sincerely told Woo-soo that he was a much more wonderful person than he thought he was. Us couldn't comprehend how the defeated Yoon could smile and call him wonderful. He turned away and said that he was not at all the person Yoon thought he was, but he would soon see everything. Us vowed to become the best that everyone would be forced to acknowledge and rise to the top, where they would not dare despise him. He confidently declared that he would prove to the whole world who he really is. Yoon supported him, asking him to remember that there was always someone nearby who believed in him. And Us promised not to forget. As he left, Us asked Yoon to watch his path to the top carefully. Behind closed doors, a voice congratulated Bullock on reaching the main tournament, praising his magnificent annihilation dash. Bullock stammers an apology to Us for leaving him in trouble, but Us replies that everything is fine. Bullock says with understanding that Usa had no other choice, and in his place, he would have done the same. Us assumes that if they both reach the end, they will have to fight, and he hopes for a worthy fight. He confidently states that in any case, he will be the final winner. Based on the results of the qualifying competition, someone became the winner in this battle, and someone turned out to be the loser. The qualifying competition, which included the joys and sorrows of many people, has come to an end. And now a new stage begins. The curtain opens completely, revealing a giant skull and heralding a more grand and spectacular event. A bloody battle begins for those who have been recognized as true necromancers. The spectators look with delight at the champion standing on the dais and shout out his name, Kalen Crow. The masked host announces that the final tournament of the War of the Dead has begun. The second presenter, wearing a hat, welcomes the 1,000 great necromancers who have advanced to the main tournament. He says that each of those present has proven their worth, and from now on, the world will watch them even more closely. Wealth, fame, and popularity, which they never knew before, will come their way depending on their skills and efforts. The presenter calls on everyone to fight, burning their souls with the readiness to die. He then introduces the greatest man of our time and the finest of necromancers, Kalen Crow, who awaits them at the top. The host asks Kalen Crow to address the candidates with a message. Kalen Crow, who turns out to be the masked host, contemptuously calls all the fighters scum. Fighters who advance to the main tournament receive a completely different status and minimal benefits until the very end of the War of the Dead. Starting with the current tournament, they can enter into sponsorship contracts with various corporations, receiving support and funding from them. Corporations that sign a contract place their logo on the fighters' capes, and each participant can sign up to 4 contracts. The corporations held a talent fair before the start of the main tournament, where a fierce competition for the best players unfolded. Dozens of corporations took part in the event, but there were also some participants who failed to sign a single contract. The host calls the next participant, Fighter Usa, onto the stage. When Us introduces himself, information about him appears on the screens, including his place of birth and a significant drop in his popularity index. One sponsor notes that Us doesn't fit into their brand concept, despite praising his craft. Us stops the presenter, who is trying to send him away, and says that he is not finished yet. He claims that he came only because attendance was mandatory, and he is not interested in such nonsense. Turning his back, Us says that only his own name will be emblazoned on it. A voice from one of the screens asks if he is angry that someone is trying to take the fruits of his labor. An unseen interlocutor offers us a look at the guard next to him, calling him the best of the best they hired to stand here This man had to go through the most brutal training and back it up with boundless diligence. Although his efforts are in no way inferior to those of Usa, the world will appreciate the fighter's efforts much more and remember him as a greater man. The reason is that Usa has an unstoppable industry behind him. This industry was built through the sweat and sacrifices of countless people over many years, not just his efforts. The sponsor advises the puppy to learn humility. Otherwise, he will end up like his father. Us shouts in rage that he, damn it, doesn't know anything about his father at all. The interviewee describes his father as a man stuck in the past, who dumped the burden of his own self-hatred on his wife and son. In the end, he renounced himself, became the king of the dump and a dirty, disgusting piece of human trash. Us screams in horror that he is different when he is told that this is the blood that flows in his veins. He rushes at the guard, screaming that he will prove that he is not like his father. With a wild look, Us screams that he will sacrifice everything just to prove that he is different. The mysterious shadow with a grin offers him to prove it by burning himself to ashes. That was the name of the Berserk Corporation, which had entered into an exclusive sponsorship contract with Us. Thanks to his contract with Berserker, Us was able to move into a more spacious and cleaner house for the duration of the tournament. He was also provided with a custom-made mask. His pink-haired companion falls onto the soft bed and tells Yusu to do whatever he wants. She notes that it still doesn't compare to the previous house, but it feels like they are gradually rising. Us thanks her, saying that without her, this would not have been possible, and he will always be grateful to her. The girl suggests that he lie on the edge of the bed if he finds it uncomfortable to sleep on the floor. He politely declines, claiming that her comfort comes first. An image of his father appears in his mind, telling him that he will end up the same way as him. Another fighter, Ral, is furious that his fan mail has dropped by 30%, and the number of articles about him has decreased by 40%. He laments that passing the third qualifying round in the 900th ranks has damaged his reputation, and now everyone is talking only about his fall. His assistant tries to console him, saying that many people are rooting for him, and these letters will give him strength. Ral asks with disdain what they mean by root for pain, recalling how he received 10,000 letters for a victory and 2,000 or 3,000 for second place. He claims that, regardless of the decline in popularity, these figures have always been the same, and doubts that there is any soul put into them. For him, all of this is nothing more than numbers that change depending on how his battle is presented. In despair, he cries out that these numbers constantly tell him how pathetic he is. He decides that defeat is unacceptable this time and asks who his first opponent is in the main tournament. The assistant begins to name his opponent, Mr. Ral. The final begins, which consists of one-on-one fights, where the winner is determined by the outcome of one battle. This keeps the tension high and makes fan rivalries the highlight of the tournament. The first round of the final stage is the most important, as about 500 people are eliminated immediately. Since opponents are selected randomly, less experienced participants are given the opportunity to withdraw from the fight once. However, refusal does not guarantee an easier opponent next time, which only prolongs the tense psychological struggle. The assistant informs Ral that his opponent is a participant named Riviera. He asks who it is, and learns that she is 23 years old, called Lightning Rivi, and is a diamond rank. The assistant adds that after being eliminated in the qualifying round, she achieved the rank of silver, then gold, and then diamond, maintaining her upward trend. Ral is dismissive of the growth trend, as diamond's rank is significantly lower than his, and asks about the media's forecasts. According to the forecast, there is a 90.54% chance that he will lose. At the same time, Riviera is shocked to learn that her opponent will be the same impenetrable Ral. Her assistant confirms this, and Riviera says in surprise that he is super famous and has already won. The assistant explains that he has weakened greatly lately and suggests that Riviera refuse the fight, since her rank is lower. Riviera hesitates, as there is no need to fight a strong opponent from the very beginning, but she still decides to try to fight, thinking that the fans will be interested. The assistant says she knew about her decision and reports that she received letters from fans. She hands her about 30 letters and talks about gifts at the door, which makes Riviera very happy. Sitting at the table, she happily reads a letter from Mrs. Emma, who recently gave birth but will still come to watch her fight. Meanwhile, Ral orders his people to redo everything, demanding that they create the most effective combination based on the data he has accumulated. His assistant asks him worriedly if he is okay, as he has become overly obsessed with numbers when creating his knights. The assistant asks Ral if the impenetrable wall was not the very ideal he sought to prove. Ral turns away and coldly replies that such nonsense doesn't matter, because only numbers are important. He claims the numbers never lie, and right now, they all tell him he's going down. Sweating from the strain, he adds that they keep whispering to him about it. Meanwhile, in the arena, a huge crowd enthusiastically chants the names of the fighters, Rivi and Ral. A participant named Rivi greets the audience and thanks everyone for coming to watch this fight. She promises to do her best to ensure the audience enjoys the show, and her fans in the crowd shout that the bespectacled ones are the best. Suddenly, someone from the crowd notices Knight Ral and asks in surprise why he is not in wall form. Ral mentally explains that he used all the accumulated data to create the perfect knight in attack and defense. According to the rules, a knight's heart cannot be covered by armor. It must be on the outside to easily determine its location. After analyzing a lot of data, he found that the most stable location for the heart is the top of the head. In addition, to prepare for attacks from above, he created a movable shield arm and increased his defense. Analysis of recent matches has shown that attacks from a distance provide a 23.5% greater chance of winning. This weapon, weighing approximately 400 kilograms and made from tibia, can be thrown at a speed of up to 30 meters per second. He also installed a compressed, muscle-powered long-range mechanism capable of rapidly firing a total of 240 bone spikes. In case of close combat, he provided various weapon systems and protective measures. Ral is absolutely confident of his victory, because from a numerical point of view, his creation is flawless. The host announces the start of the first match of the final battle of the Necromancers, and asks the participants to get ready. Rivi casts the lightning strike spell with a determined look, touching her skull amulet. A powerful bolt of lightning from the sky strikes not the knight Ral, but Rivi's own knight. In a short flashback, the protagonist discusses the emerald-ranked necromancer Papuri's companion, noting that she would be a powerful opponent. He confidently says that now that they are together, he cannot even imagine that they will lose, and the girl agrees with him. However, one thing worries him, namely the nickname of this necromancer. He says her nickname is Furry Queen Popuri, and while he doesn't know the exact meaning, she's said to have a passion for all things furry. The protagonist remembers that Ral is participating in today's match, and he becomes interested in how everything will go. In the arena, Ral watches in shock as lightning envelops his opponent's knight, its light reflecting in his eyes. The words that come to mind are that the strongest thing in this world is the desire to protect something. He remembers that this is what his father, who was a mason and built walls, always said. His father worked the slowest, but very carefully, to create the perfect wall. As a child, Ralu thought this was pathetic, because his father's slowness meant he earned less than others, and they hardly spent time together. One day, while climbing the fortress wall to repair a small crack, his father fell and died a senseless death. Ral recalls how one day, due to heavy rain, a serious landslide occurred in their village. It was a terrible tragedy, during which all the fortress walls collapsed, burying countless people and livestock alive. For several days, their quiet moans and cries could still be heard from underground. However, his family was safe and sound. Only the wall his father had built remained, and it protected them. Thanks to this wall, he and many other people who were behind it were able to survive. Only then did he realize that this wall had been created by his father, a quiet and reserved man. He realized that his father, who loved his family, wanted to protect them with his own hands. Ral's assistant looks at him with understanding, realizing why he is also building walls. Ral sits on a bone throne and says that he also wanted to prove the existence of a wall in this world. He continues that this wall will be able to protect someone and will never collapse. His assistant genuinely thinks this is amazing and says that it is because of these beliefs that his fans support him. However, she warns that stubbornly sticking to one strategy could become a weakness over time. She asks what he will do if his beliefs ever become a problem for him. Ral confidently replies that he knows what he is fighting for and what he should focus on in battle. The action shifts to the arena, where Ral, in combat, puts his finger to his lips and then slams his fist into the ground, causing a burst of energy. He points at the enemy robot and shouts the name of his attack, Abyssal Dive. The robot attacks him with a hail of black spikes, but they crash into a red barrier. Ral shouts that he's got him, while his red-haired partner creates a barrier and the robot prepares another attack. A golden energy field on the ground reflects enemy spikes. He decides that he must deliver his abyssal dive strike with maximum precision to prevent his opponent from having a chance to respond. Ral folds his fingers to attack, and the robot with severed legs tries to move forward. He is perplexed as to why the robot's movements appear unnatural, since, according to the calculations, everything was perfect. Spectators notice that the atmosphere around Ral is unusual, and he is constantly retreating. Unlike in his previous fights, the enemy robot loses its balance and begins to stagger. He understands that his rival decided to cut off the robot's legs in order to knock him down, but he assures himself that this was part of his calculations. In a rage, he shouts that no one should dare to underestimate him. His opponent, Riviana, understands that his attacks and strategy are very varied and should not be underestimated. She looks at the energy indicator on the robot's head and realizes that the supply is almost depleted, and soon she will be defenseless. Riviana decides to first knock over the robot's main body and then strike with lightning. A powerful blast of energy and a kick hit the robot's leg. She joyfully shouts that the robot's heart is open and prepares the final blow. Ral yells back that he won't let her win and is about to empty all his remaining ammo. A new, smaller figure emerges from the falling robot and fires a powerful beam of energy. After the fight, Ral leaves with his assistant, shouting that he won. He is outraged that analysts predicted the probability of his loss to be 90.54%. Ral smiles and asks his assistant if their strategy worked and if people admire his transformation. The assistant looks at the report silently, then reports that most viewers think he was losing the entire fight. She adds that the victory was only achieved thanks to Riviana's decisive mistake at the very end. Ral can't believe that no one thinks his victory is deserved, and his assistant confirms this by talking about the difference in the audience's reaction. Analysts say he would have lost if Riviana had not made that mistake. In another room, Riviana is crying and berating herself for the stupid miscalculation she made at the end of the fight. She laments that she could have done much better when Ral approaches her and calls her name. Riviana apologizes for her appearance and thanks him for the good fight, from which she learned a lot. He tells her that mistakes are part of mastery, and the world only remembers victory or defeat. Riviana agrees with him, but says that she is not making excuses, but is simply angry with herself. She is angry because Mr. Frank supported her in every match, even when she lost several years ago. Pregnant Mrs. Neela and Uncle Kalen, who closed his shop, also came to cheer for her today. She feels bad that she couldn't show all these people her best side. The girl with red hair clenches her fists and cries, saying that this makes her very angry. Mr. Rao, standing nearby, asks why she is so worried about these people, since they are just numbers. She replies that his words mean that the sincerity of those who support her is false. The girl turns to him and asks what he, Mr. Rao, is fighting for. Watching Riviana leave, Rao felt something unusual. He thought that one day she would appear again, becoming a being of such immense power that he could not even imagine. Rao stands next to another woman and firmly decides that sooner or later this will definitely happen. In another location, a blonde woman bursts into a cluttered room and yells at Balak, asking why his house has become even more of a dump. She doesn't understand his condition, because he reached the finals for the first time and successfully completed the survival run, attracting attention to himself. Balak admits that since then he has never been able to properly complete the survival run. The girl is surprised and asks if this means he couldn't even try. He explains that there is a problem, and at the moment when it is necessary to start, a feeling of failure arises, overloading the heart. Balak says that when he first successfully snatched the lift, everything went smoothly. But now he is bothered by a subtle but nasty feeling. She tries to argue that this is no reason not to even try, but he interrupts her with a shout that he has finally received recognition. He continues that people began to recognize him on the street, and he received a sponsorship contract for the first time in his life, feeling recognized by the world. But if he fails now, he'll have to go back to those lousy times when he was a piece of useless trash. The girl tries to calm him down, saying that he was never trash. But he screams, how can she know what it's like? He continues that she can't imagine what it's like to gradually turn into a lonely, unwanted piece of trash, lost to this world. Balak says in despair that he is so afraid of returning to that time that he cannot bring himself to try again. The action moves to the arena, where the crowd chants Us's name and encourages him to show everyone what he's made of. Us, the masked fighter, raises his hand and announces that his name is Us, and everyone must remember it. His companion in the bone mask asks him not to get too excited and to concentrate, because their opponent is strong. Us agrees, noting that Popuri is known as a melee beast-class necromancer, and she comes to the finals with a new strategy every time. His partner asks what the furry queen is so famous for, but begins to stutter when pronouncing her nickname. Popuri herself, an anthropomorphic fox, enters the arena and is enthusiastically welcomed by the crowd as their queen. In the advertising flashback, the voiceover offers a new look to those who don't like their reflection and who love cute, furry animals. The advertisement presents a product that is an offer to them: furry potion. The suited salesman assures that this potion has been approved by the Magical Drugs Safety Authority. He holds up 5 fingers and claims that the potion's effect lasts for 5 whole hours. The muscular man drinks the potion and begins to painfully transform with a scream. He turns into a teddy bear, and the seller explains that the furry potion ensures a quick and almost painless transformation. The seller promises that you will forget about your usual appearance and become a charming furry. In the present day, a red-haired girl watches this advertisement, in which the announcer warns against misuse. In the arena, Popuri turns to her furry friends and asks if they are ready to have fun with her. She announces the start of the fight she has prepared for her cute little animals. Popuri commands a through strike, and her summoned beast with a bone skull attacks the enemy. USA's partner dodges a spiked whip that flies in a straight line and can tear him apart on impact. Popuri announces her next attack, Spiral Strike, and several whips rush towards her enemy. The enemy blocks the attack with a large shield, which shatters into pieces from the powerful blow. He uses this moment to lunge forward and dodge the next whip strike. No matter how fast and dangerous the whip is, it still moves in one line, so its trajectory can be grasped from the very beginning. Such an attack will inevitably create a breach. Eli drops to one knee but says he's fine, surprised by the whip's strange movement. His skull-helmeted companion is puzzled as to why Popuri, a melee fighter, is using a whip at all. Popuri, the fox woman, addresses the audience, saying that they are amazed by her amazing and beautiful whip. She boasts that this is the result of the perfect fusion of the whip with her muscles and skill honed by years of training. Popuri declares that it is forbidden to approach the queen without permission, and orders the opponents to fall without a trace. Eli dodges another blow and asks what their plan is. His partner discourages him from using the dash again, as there are only 2 safe uses left. He also rejects the idea of a one-point strike, as the enemy's attack range is unknown, and a mistake would result in isolation without an ace up his sleeve. When the whip hits Eli's shield, his partner realizes there is only one option left. This option turns out to be retreat. Eli steps back, thinking that even though they are losing ground, for some reason the thought of a possible loss does not occur to him. A flashback shows Eli being taught how to use his shield by his mentor. Finally, the shield catches the whip, and the mentor explains that the shield's mouth is made from the muscles of a saltwater crocodile, and its bite force is 180 times greater than a human's. He is slow and difficult to get to bite, but once he bites, he will never let go. Eli holds the captured whip, announcing that the real fight will now begin. Popuri mockingly asks again about the real fight, calling him overconfident. Eli reports that the whip is 100 meters long, made of high-density muscle tissue and weighs over 2 tons. Popuri doubts that such a small knight can withstand this monster. Eli struggles to maintain the tension, and his mentor mentally asks him to hold on, because as long as the whip is taut, the enemies will not be able to attack. He is confident that the moment the balance of power is upset, the winner will become obvious. Popuri didn't expect them to last this long. Now both sides are holding force in opposite directions, creating a strong tension. The mentor explains that if in such a situation one of them suddenly rushes inside, changing the direction of the force, then the enemy will instantly lose his support and be left without protection. One of the warriors shouts and runs forward to perform this maneuver. Eli loses his balance and is pulled forward along the ground. Popuri watches in amazement as he leans forward for a moment, regains his balance, and then jumps back again. Now Eli is flying through the air holding the whip, and his mentor asks if he can maintain this position. The instructor explains that while the whip is taut, the opponent cannot swing it. But the real goal lies elsewhere. The goal is to wait for the moment when the opponent's center of gravity shifts forward and one leg is completely off the ground. Eli uses the tension of the whip as a catapult and rushes straight towards his enemy. He flies towards his target, surrounded by a powerful blue and red aura. Eli delivers a devastating blow called a pinpoint breakthrough. Popuri stands in shock, while Eli's mentor calmly watches the proceedings against the backdrop of a cheering crowd. He raises his arm in victory and the crowd chants "Us," celebrating Us' crushing blow. After the fight, the winner extends his hand and says that it was an excellent duel, and his knight turned out to be very good. He adds that he simply turned out to be stronger this time. Popuri bats his hand away and introduces herself as Popuri, Queen of the Beasts. Popuri declares that the queen does not need such cheap pity. She turns sharply and walks away from the man in the white cloak. Weakened by the fight, she slides down the stone wall to the ground. The girl breathes heavily, trying to catch her breath. Already in her human form, she sits on the floor and laments that she is lost. She thinks her opponent was very strong and regrets refusing to shake his hand. The girl justifies herself by saying that he only did this because in front of him was the furry Popuri, whose image is perfect. She also complains that these clothes are too uncomfortable. At this time, a crowd of people on the street say that Popuri's room is somewhere nearby. The girl walks through the city, looking for Popuri, and does not understand why people are looking at her. She recalls that due to shyness, she stuttered badly and was shy in front of strangers. One day, she accidentally stumbled upon a furry potion. She decided that by putting on this mask, she could behave differently, become more confident, and so, she became a furry. The effect was astonishing, as Popuri, wearing the mask, spoke with unrivaled confidence, and the audience was delighted. Every day, Popuri became more and more perfect, while the ordinary one remained worthless. She walks down the street and hopefully wonders if they will ever be able to love an ordinary Popuri too. But he immediately pushes this thought away, believing that without fur, no one will recognize such a simpleton. Suddenly, she notices the same guy from the arena and realizes that he lives in the same area. He calls her name, asking if it's Popuri, and she freezes in surprise. The girl panics and denies that she is Popuri. The guy explains that when looking at a person, he always looks into the eyes first to predict their actions and emotions. He says it helps him avoid violence and other filth. He confidently states that her eyes definitely belong to Popuri and asks why she is lying. Popuri asks him to go to a quiet place so that no one can hear their conversation. In the alley, he says that he now understands everything, and she asks if it's strange that she was often teased because of her character. She believes that even if she gets scolded, keeping this secret for the sake of those who love the fluffy Popuri is cool. The guy replies that she is trying to become better, and everyone who tries deserves respect. He adds that, in his personal opinion, she looks cute both with and without fur. She is shocked by his words, and he says that this is his subjective opinion, but he supports her efforts. Popuri asks sheepishly if she really seems cute even in human form. Later, she comes to his house and admires what a beautiful house he has, which is also close to her own. Inside, she is surprised at how neatly everything is folded, and the knight standing next to the guy asks what is going on here. The boy explains to his knight that it is Popuri, that crazy fox, but he doesn't believe her because of her different appearance. Popuri recognizes his knight in the armor and admires how precisely and qualitatively it is made. She looks at the knight's fist with interest, but the guy interrupts her, saying that this is enough. He explains that these are the necromancer's personal secrets and asks her to leave, as he has already allowed her to look around the house. The girl apologizes and thanks for allowing her to look around the house. She says she caught a glimpse of the weapon's blueprints and has a few ideas. Popuri asks if she can come next time and help with the design, but he refuses. After she leaves, another person reproaches the guy for inviting someone, knowing about their situation. Eleanor kicks the rock in rage, screaming about how everything is driving her crazy. The next day, Popuri comes to them and offers to try the famous skull-shaped buns. The guy is surprised, but takes the treat and starts eating, saying that it wasn't worth buying anything. He admits that it tastes good, and Popuri hopefully asks if it's true, while the skeleton watches them. Later, the boy and Popuri work on the designs together, discussing that the main problem with the exoskeleton is its weight. Popuri suggests making the inside in the form of a lattice, but the guy doubts that this will work. She says she feels very awkward and asks permission to change for a moment. Popuri transforms into an anthropomorphic fox and breathes a sigh of relief, saying that it has become easier now. In her true form, she explains that the lattice structure is vulnerable to stress concentration and fatigue. Instead, She proposes using a multi-layered honeycomb structure with cells of varying sizes. Lisa clarifies that in areas of high voltage, small hexagonal cells need to be placed more closely together. The guy delightedly calls her the most talented necromancer he has ever met, and she modestly replies that his help was also useful. He says that it is still far from finished, and Popuri, noticing his dark hands, thinks of something. She suggests holding a joint meeting the next day. He hesitates at first, but then agrees, saying that he really wouldn't mind some help. A skeleton suddenly appears, grabs the fox from behind, and orders her to stop messing around. Popuri screams, and the boy shouts Eleanor's name in horror, not understanding how a corpse can speak. The skeleton turns back into Eleanor, who yells at the guy in rage, asking if he is in his right mind. She reproaches him for sitting with a satisfied face and asks if he is planning to build a family nest with this crazy fox. Popuri stands up for him and calls Eleanor ugly, like a lump of dough, which drives her into an indescribable rage. The guy understands that the reason for the quarrel is not important, and the situation needs to be resolved somehow. He decides that he will have to deal with the witness who saw something he shouldn't have seen. He slowly approaches Popuri with a frightening expression on his face, and she asks fearfully what is wrong. In the next scene, Popuri sits bound hand and foot, gagged, and quietly whimpering. Eleanor says that in human form, Popuri is incapable of anything, but as soon as she grows fur, she immediately lets go of her hands. The tied-up girl tries to scream, begging to be saved and released. The guy asks Eleanor why she assumed he was going to kill Popuri, since they just need to get rid of the evidence. He explains that killing is too risky, and that it is worth trying to resolve everything through dialogue first. He kneels down in front of Popuri and promises to remove the gag so he can explain in detail what happened to them. The guy strictly warns her not to scream under any circumstances and asks if she understands. As soon as she is released, Popuri immediately begins to scream loudly and call for help. He tries to shut her up, and Eleanor screams from behind that she told him to just bury her. After Popuri is calmed down, the boy explains that the corpse came back to life with its memories intact, and this secret must not be revealed. The girl replies that she feels a little uncomfortable, but after listening to their story, she understands that such measures are completely understandable. He adds that if the information leaks, he will not be able to participate in the competition, and the battle of the necromancers may cease. Popuri swears that he won't tell anyone, because otherwise Mr. Oos might get hurt. He thanks her for her understanding, but asks her to give him a little time so that he can trust her. Popuri smiles slyly and says that since this is how it turned out, now they will be together all day long. At night, all three of them are lying in bed, and Popuri asks to lie in the middle, but Eleanor is categorically against it. The boy asks Eleanor in surprise if she can sleep, and she confirms that she can. Popuri says with admiration that he looks like a real, living person. She asks why he has to go so far, because if he loses the fight, he will die for real. Eleanor asks irritably if she really has to tell her this. Popuri sheepishly replies that it's not exactly that, and Eleanor orders her to stop her idle chatter and go to sleep. The girl whispers that when they lie next to each other, she feels like she's camping with friends, but Eleanor cuts her off, calling her noisy. In the morning, Popuri notices that the boy is already awake and doing something at the table, although the sun has just risen. Eleanor explains that this always happens, and she has never seen him sleep more than 6 hours. She offers him a cup of jasmine tea, which she always carries with her in case she gets tired. Popuri asks him not to forget about his health and to do everything little by little, without rushing. The guy accepts the mug with surprise and thanks her for her concern. Eleanor, watching them, says with displeasure that she asked him not to rejoice at such things. Later, walking down the street, Popuri says that she likes being together, because it feels like she has a lot of friends. Suddenly, she remembers a rumor she heard yesterday, and the guy asks her again with interest. She says that they say that those necromancers who saw the devil performed unimaginable miracles. Popuri suggests that something similar happened to Madame Eleanor, but the boy replies that he has never seen devils and does not believe in such nonsense. The girl continues to reflect that it is still not fully understood by what principle necromancers are able to control corpses. She concludes that the very fact of reviving a dead creature and controlling it already contradicts the laws of the universe. Popuri thoughtfully suggests that perhaps all this is just a game of the gods. The guy snaps that he doesn't care about such nonsense because the only thing that matters to him is winning. Another participant approaches them and asks Uso what the result of his first match of the finals was. A flashback begins with the crowd chanting Balak's name and asking him to perform his survival run again. Balak thinks that his long-held wish has come true, and the world has finally paid attention to him. However, the stronger this attention was, the more clearly he felt not happiness, but a suffocating awareness of the limits of his talents. Fighting with just one technique proved to be too much of a burden, so he tried to master other techniques as well. But, as expected, all his attempts to create something new ended in complete failure. He knew he didn't have much talent, but he believed he could achieve something with just his stubbornness and willpower. Now he wonders if he is simply stubbornly trying to make the impossible possible. Balak thinks with regret that if Us had been in his place, everything would have been different. The more he realized that only the survival run made him special, the more he lost the ability to use it. In the present day, the crowd in the stands is once again chanting, "Run for survival." He understands that he must demonstrate his run to them, but he is overcome by the fear of failure. Balak despairs as he wonders if he will have to go back to the beginning again if he fails. With a look of horror on his face, he shouts out the name of the move, Survival Run. The narrator says that Wreath was a special person. At the age of 6, he first created and subjugated a knight, and after passing his exams, he entered a school for gifted necromancers. At 15, the earliest age allowed, he took part in the Battle of the Necromancers and immediately passed the qualifying round. Thus, he became the youngest participant in the main tournament, receiving the title of Gifted. But in his very first match of the main tournament, he suffered defeat due to one stupid mistake. He, who had never known a single failure before, then heard something unpleasant for the first time. He heard words about how he was so-so, and that more was expected of him. These words, heard for the first time in his life, became a curse for him for the rest of his life. In an effort to break free from this curse, he reached the main tournament time after time, but as soon as he stepped onto the main arena, a whisper began to ring in his ears that he was worse than expected. Under the gaze of the crowd, fear gripped him. His pulse quickened, his vision swam, and his hands trembled uncontrollably. All this again and again led to a breakdown of techniques and another failure. He understood that it was enough to overcome this just once. Knowing that he only needed to win once and the curse would be lifted, he challenged again and again. He continued his attempts for 18 years straight, but each time his stage fright only got worse. He convinced himself that this time he had prepared 4 techniques, and everything would definitely work out. Hearing whispers that he was worse than expected, he shouted in anger at everyone to shut up. He kept shouting for everyone to shut their mouths. The first match of the final between Wreath and Balak was about to begin, and he thought that a victory would help him overcome everything. He desperately hoped to win this time, because the match was about to start. His opponent, a creature with a skull for a head, rushed to attack. He began to feel sick from intense excitement right there in the arena. His opponent, Balak, was also nervous, and struggled to pronounce the spell that summoned the giant beetle. It turned out that his opponent was also sick with fear. The summoned beetle immediately attacked the skull creature. Wreath tried to force himself to move, telling himself to come to his senses. Meanwhile, the creatures they had summoned simply froze, clinging to each other. Balak, too, could not move from the tension, but he understood that he could not lose. He couldn't afford to fall down again. The spectators looked at what was happening in bewilderment, calling it a pathetic fight. The match was so ridiculous that the spectators could only grin wryly. Those who came to watch the fight were disappointed, and whistles and jeers could be heard from all sides. 2 spectators decided it was a waste of money, but one of them said nothing. He said that this was the first time in his life he had seen such a desperate fight. Wreath begged his opponent on his knees to just lose to him once. In response to the pleas for rescue, Balak shouted that he also needed rescue. He asked for mercy, an old man who simply had nowhere else to run. Both fighters tearfully begged each other for mercy. After some time, the interlocutor asked Balak how it all ended. He assumed Balak had lost, judging by the look on his face. But he said no. Balak announced with a heavy sigh that he had won. He explained that he was shaking with fear due to the intense tension. But his opponent was in even worse condition. He still couldn't forget the expression on his face right after the fight ended. His interlocutors did not understand why he was not happy, since he had reached the final for the first time and even won. Balak replied that he was simply lucky, and won not because of his skills, but because his opponent's risk was higher. Balak doubts such a stroke of luck will happen again. He understands that if he cannot repeat that breakthrough, then defeat will be inevitable. Us calmly suggests that he act. He asks Balak why he is trembling with fear, since he has already achieved success once. Balak looks at him and admits that he envies such confidence. The girl asks who the man is, and Us replies that his name is Bolak, and he has made it to the finals for the first time in 30 years. Us adds that people learned about him through the survival run, and it would be great to see his impressive technique again. The red-haired girl notices that Us is always so honest and doesn't seem to envy others at all. Us explains that envy does him more harm than good. He firmly declares that he will definitely win this battle, become the best, and will do everything for this. The girl in the helmet asks Usa about his ideal type, but the redhead tells her not to talk nonsense. A messenger in a skull mask knocks on the door to deliver to Whiskers a notice about the second round of the final tournament. Us is surprised at how quickly time has passed, and is shocked to read the name of his next opponent, Belladere. The girl with white hair tries to remember where she could have heard this name. Us screams, realizing that this is the raven they met in the qualifying round. The white-haired girl contemptuously calls him a weakling, and thinks that this fight will be easy. Us says they don't have any new weapons yet, and will probably have to use the old shield again. The red-haired girl believes that the chance of meeting the same opponent again is minimal. It is almost impossible. However, she continues to ponder, because the name Belladere seems familiar to her. Meanwhile, Belladere is in his room thinking about Usa, the guy he already fought. He admits that the enemy was indeed strong and would probably be difficult to defeat. He's afraid that if he loses now, he'll end up at rock bottom again. In the arena, the crowd enthusiastically chants Usa's name. Two girls in the stands are discussing USA, calling him a painfully fragile, handsome man with a dangerous aura. The red-haired girl shyly protests that he is gentle and caring, but is interrupted by a shout pointing towards the arena. The champion, Callan Crow, appears in the stands. The spectators are puzzled as to what the champion is doing there, and assume that she has come to see Uesa. Us also notices her and wonders why she is here. He argues that participants often watch matches for analysis or psychological pressure. Although his fame has grown, he does not consider himself so important that the champion himself is afraid of him. Us sees that champion Callan Crow is not paying any attention to him at all. He is surprised to realize that she came to look not at him, but at Belladere. Us can't understand the reason, because in the last battle, Belladere didn't stand out in any way. The red-haired girl in the stands thoughtfully says the names, Champion Callan Crow and Belladere. Suddenly, it dawns on her and she asks in horror if those rumors are true. The judge confirms the readiness of both participants for the fight. He announces the start of the second match of the final stage. Suddenly, another masked participant jumps into the arena. Us tells his partner that it is not yet known why the champion is here, but there may be something they don't know. He suggests not to attack for now, but to keep a distance and observe the opponent. Us notices that the creature has noticeably shrunk in size and wonders if it is still fighting in the air. The creature doesn't look particularly strong, so Us is puzzled as to why the champion came to him in particular. Meanwhile, another participant, Belladere, remembers his special technique. He is a promising newcomer necromancer who attracts everyone's attention, and the fist he brings down on his enemies is unstoppable. Belladere admits that his opponent is strong, but after the last fight, he has studied his fighting style and skills well enough. No matter how powerful the enemy's blow, its point of impact is no more than 20 centimeters, and if you dodge, the chance of victory increases. Since reducing volume directly increases evasion, he kept the size of his creature to a minimum, making it as compact as possible. The creature's structure was based on the hummingbird's shoulder joint and the pelvis and tailbone of a hawk. This allowed him to ensure instant evasive action, a sharp turn, and a rapid start. Having dodged the attack and approached, he will drive his beak in at a pre-calculated angle, which will cause the body to rupture and the head to be thrown forward. The head, constructed from the complex muscles of a woodpecker, vibrates at a frequency of 20 Hz, destroying all internal organs and muscle tissue. It's a technique he's put everything he's got into, and it's called the bone marrow warhead. Belladere is determined to prove his strength, and he must do so. The creature quickly approaches its opponent, who is already preparing a powerful blow. The strategy that Belladere had so carefully prepared proved to be quite effective, but he had failed to take one thing into account. He didn't take into account Eleanor's incredible speed and agility, who easily dodged the attack. Eleanor's overwhelming physical superiority alone trumps everything. This power surpasses anything Belladere could wring out of himself. A girl named Vert watches in horror what is happening in the arena. Eleanor says she has a rough idea of his style and skills, and while his efforts are commendable, they are not enough. She tenses up and prepares to deliver the finishing blow to the defeated creature. Believing that the enemy is not strong enough, she deals a crushing blow. A powerful blow completely destroys the creature created by the necromancer. Us breathes a sigh of relief and can't believe they won so easily. He begins to think about why Callan then. But suddenly a terrible pain pierces him and he screams. Belladere falls to his knees and screams no in despair. He tears off his mask and underneath it is a crying woman's face, distorted with grief. Us looks at her in confusion and thinks that her face looks so familiar. Viewers also notice the resemblance, saying that it is difficult to tell just by the eyes, but the hair color is similar. Other spectators also recognize her and confirm that she looks exactly like champion Callan Crow. A doctor runs to Belladere, and it dawns on us that the twin sisters both participated in the tournament. In a memoir, their mother says that instead of raising 2 hyena cubs, she would rather raise 1 lion. She addresses the little Callan and Belladere, saying that they both came from her womb. But only the one who turns out to be stronger will she recognize as her child. And only one will be able to bear the name of the Crow family. The winner will also own an heirloom from her father, a symbol of their family. She says that she will give one of the earrings to the one who proves her superiority. This earring, a one-of-a-kind stone, is created by mixing and squeezing drops of blood from family members for generations. Therefore, to possess her means to become her perfect right hand and a true member of their family. The girls watch tensely as their mother clutches the precious relic in her fist. "So prove to me which of you is the more superior person," she tells them at last. The mother says with a sinister smile that sisters are obliged to hate each other. The masked girl, Callan, reports that she did go to see Belladere after all. The mother reproaches her, saying that she arbitrarily disrupted a meeting that she had managed to arrange with difficulty. Callan asks for forgiveness, and a creepy smile appears on his mother's face. She says it's okay, because her ability to act on her mood makes Callan worthy of being a real star. The mother reminds us of the need to always be mindful of the views of others and maintain an impeccable image. She calls Callan the jewel of their family and her perfect other half. Then the mother asks how it felt to see a pathetic fake inferior to her for the first time in a long time. Callan replies that he considers this a natural result. She says that the child always had worse reflexes and coordination, and she was inferior to her in everything from birth. Mother confirms that only Callan is worthy of the highest recognition in this world. Callan confidently states that, as before, she will continue to prove it. The mother exclaims in delight that it is perfect, simply perfect. She says that the birth of such a treasure in their family is a blessing from God, and asks if her daughter knows how much she loves her. The mother tenderly addresses her as daughter, and Callan answers her as mother. As she leaves, her mother tells her to get ready to stretch before bed, because a real star must take perfect care of herself. In the trophy room, a trainer helps another girl, Belladere, stretch while her mother watches. The mother watches the exercises carefully, mentally correcting her so that she does not twist due to the strength of her lower back. She looks at Callan's awards, displayed prominently, as Belladere continues training. At this time, Belladere's thoughts are filled with despair and the desire to be looked at too. She feels alive, but her appearance is exhausted and full of hopelessness. The girl understands that this is not the end, because she has one last chance. She recalls the rules of the tournament, where 251 people advance to the next stage. The remaining 49 participants will be selected from among the losers in the second chance challenge. Belladere realizes that if he passes it, he will be able to continue climbing upward. She doubts she can do it at such a pathetic level. The girl, in tears, realizes that she has always been behind Callan, and worse than her in everything. She despairs at the thought that if she cannot overcome this, she will fall even further. A dark silhouette of a demonic creature with red horns appears in her mind. The creature says that he understands her pain, and Belladere looks at him with tears in his eyes. She asks in horror and tears if he is the devil. The girl assumes that he is going to make her a tempting offer in exchange for her soul. She begs to be given strength, even if she has to burn in hellfire all her life. Belladere screams that she only needs to gain power once and defeat Callan, even if she is miserable for the rest of her life. The demon replies that he does not want her to suffer, child, but he doesn't want her to be happy either. Belladere asks in confusion what he is. The creature replies that it is an opportunity that has come to it out of love for the limitless potential of man. It is someone who is capable of becoming anyone and doing anything. Even kill 1,000,000 people, the creature says, opening its single, huge eye. Or save 1,000,000 people, the creature adds, looming over the man. Child, what kind of person do you want to be? It asks, and the man cries in horror. A young man named Us suddenly wakes up in his bed and sees a fox girl sleeping next to him. He asks Popuri in shock what she is doing there. And she, waking up, apologizes for the inconvenience, explaining that she was very warm. The fox girl says he has a high body temperature and bulging muscles, suggesting he was popular with the girls. She continues to ask him if he has had many relationships before. Us replies with surprise that he has never had not only a relationship, but even just friends. Popuri is surprised by his answer and admits that she has the same situation. She invites him to discover what a relationship is together, promising to brew him jasmine tea in the mornings. Us asks in confusion how they learn this. But at that moment, someone grabs Popuri by the hair. This is Eleanor, who sternly tells the fox girl that she already warned her not to be cunning. She adds with disdain that she can brew him this jasmine tea herself. Popuri objects that tea from a corpse cannot compare to tea from a living person, and advises Eleanor to look at herself. Eleanor demands that Us make a decision right now, choosing either her or Popuri. When Us doesn't understand what she means, Eleanor asks who he will save if they both fall into the water. Us decisively grabs Eleanor's hand and says that he will save her. He explains his choice by the fact that at the moment, she is the most important thing to him. Eleanor is surprised at first, then blushes and shyly agrees. She then turns to Popuri and says with a smirk that she would have drowned. Eleanor hugs Us, explaining that there is a special bond between them, comrades in arms. She declares that there is no place for Popuri next to them. Popuri objects that Usa's words apply to the criteria for comrades, and she, in turn, spoke about her future marriage partner. Popuri explains to a stunned Eleanor that a comrade in arms and a husband are two completely different things. She asks Us if he is going to marry Eleanor, but he replies that he has never thought about marriage. Eleanor yells at Popuri, sarcastically asking if she is planning to marry Us herself. To her surprise, Popuri decisively shouts that yes, she will marry Usa. She explains that Whiskers was the first one to accept her without fur, and he is very kind, albeit absent-minded. She also adds that he always listens to her attentively and tries his best in an amazing way. That's why, she admits sheepishly, she likes Us. Eleanor furiously screams at Popuri to stop talking nonsense that she herself doesn't believe. Popuri furiously replies that her words are absolutely sincere. Us, completely confused, asks what they are even talking about. Popuri declares that Eleanor will remain a comrade, and she will become his wife, causing Eleanor to explode into a rant. Then Popuri asks directly if Eleanor likes Us as a man. Eleanor blushes, but her answer is interrupted by a knock on the door with information about the tournament for Us. Us opens the door and sees another participant who says that they are preparing something for those who have passed the second stage. He takes the red letter and reads with bewilderment that they are in for an autograph session with a handshake. Popuri explains that it is a fan event where participants sign autographs and shake hands. Plus, it's profitable, as you can get 15% of ticket sales and gauge the size of your fandom. Popuri explains that participation is voluntary and asks Usa what he plans to do, as this is his first meeting with fans. Us asks again with surprise, is it really true that he is about to meet people who like him? Suddenly his face lights up with delight and he declares decisively that he must go. Popuri adds that fans will want to see his knight too, so he should bring one to accompany him into battle. Us thinks with concern that Eleanor will have to pretend to be a knight in front of ordinary people all day. He decides to postpone the meeting, believing that it will be difficult for Eleanor. But she interrupts him. Eleanor says she saw the anticipation on his face and agrees to go for him. She sighs humbly and says that so be it. She will endure. Us is delighted and thanks Eleanor and promises to give her all 95% of the profits. While Us runs off to get ready, Eleanor asks Popuri what she's staring at. Us, already in a new outfit, nervously adjusts his hair and wonders why he keeps touching it. His companions honestly answer that it looks so-so. Us swears quietly and then asks where they are going, since the meeting place is in the other direction. He explains that he wants to go with Bolak since it's his first time, but he's told that the event is only for those who have passed the second stage. Eleanor asks if Balak has passed, but Us doesn't know the answer. They approach a house, from behind the door of which a man with a mustache looks out in fear. Balak laments that he lost, and that he did so in a terribly shameful and completely powerless manner. He cries, remembering how he first got a diamond-ranked participant, and after his refusal, a silver-ranked one, to whom he still lost. Us encourages him, saying that he has one last chance in the Second Chance Challenge, where 49 people will be returned. Balak thinks that this time is really the last one, and that with such thoughts he has wasted his previous chances. He realizes with despair that he has wasted 30 years of his life on this. The action moves to a stone building with a sign that says waiting room. As Us approaches the door, his companion asks if he is okay as he looks upset. They announce the start of the autograph session and ask participants to enter. Eleanor advises him to focus on the upcoming event, because he was so looking forward to meeting the people he likes for the first time. She asks if he's not curious about how many fans showed up, and Us thoughtfully agrees that she's right. He decides to pull himself together and, saying, "Let's begin," opens the door slightly. Upon entering, Us is surprised that it hasn't started yet, and Popuri explains that there is a lot of preparation to be done, as there are over 100 participants. They inspect a carefully prepared area where everything is done so that the participants on the sides cannot see each other. Eleanor asks if he's really going to go with that hairstyle, comparing it to planted green onions. Us turns to Popuri and asks if she thinks he looks strange too. The host announces that the event will begin in 1 minute, and Us, sitting down at the table, sighs deeply. He sits with his back to the door and thinks that behind it are the fans who love him. Us doubts that people who like someone like him even exist. A frightening image of a terrible monster from the past flashes through his mind. There's a nervous commotion among the crowd of fans, some looking for number 45, others worrying about whether Us will accept the gift. Eleanor asks Us if he is okay, because everything has already started. The first admirer approaches the table and timidly asks if he is Us, to which he nods uncertainly. Popuri helps a girl with a ticket, and she enthusiastically tells him that she has been watching him since the qualifying match, where he fought 3 against 1. The girl admits that she also wanted to become a necromancer, but gave up, and asks him for advice on how to become better. Us thoughtfully replies that you just have to try damn hard, and that's all. The girl is delighted with his answer, considering it the reaction of a true genius, while Us signs her autograph. She promises to continue to support him and wishes him a sure victory. Another fan says that Us reminds him of his younger self, to which he politely thanks. 2 women shout enthusiastically that Us is very cute, even cuter than he actually is. They promise to continue to root for him, even finding his signature endearing, and Us only gives a short reply. The next fan objectively states that Us is not what is considered cute or handsome. However, he acknowledges his skill, particularly admiring the quality of the knight's build. He asks if he can examine the knight, citing the right stated in the ticket. Us allows him to look, but asks not to touch it with his hands, and the man thanks him. Up close, the admirer is amazed by the stunning level of detail and how lifelike the knight looks. He reiterates that he does, in any case, acknowledge Us's skill. The man picks up the autograph and tells Usa to make sure to climb all the way to the top. A young man with shining eyes wishes Us good luck and shouts that he is rooting for him. The older man says sadly that they had similar childhoods, and that's why he's rooting for Usa. The crowd of fans chant his name, raising their fists in the air. Popuri reports that no one else is coming for now, and that they can rest a little. Us looks at the queues at the neighboring booths and wonders why he has already run out of everything. Popuri explains that other participants had celebrities come to see him, but emphasizes that for a newcomer, Usa had a lot of visitors. Us sits silently at the table, and fragments of supportive phrases from fans sound in his head. Suddenly a dark thought comes over him, asking if he really thought he had achieved anything with such a trifle. The ominous shadow calls him a piece of trash that doesn't know its place. The voice continues to mock, saying that he was not the best, which is why he got the short turn. Shadow claims that he is just a cover against which others will shine brighter. His knight interrupts his thoughts, reminding him that it is dangerous to become distracted in a fight. She says that he should clearly understand who he is fighting, but Us admits that he still doesn't know how to act correctly in a fight. Niren says she would like him to first notice those who appreciate him. She places her hand on his shoulder, assuring him that he is doing great and that he shouldn't worry. Us covers her hand with his own in gratitude, which a surprised Popuri notices. A man in a hooded cloak approaches them, and Popuri asks him to show his ticket. Us tells the stranger that he sees him for the first time, but he asks if he has forgotten him. The cloaked figure explains that he has been waiting for this moment for a long time, as it is difficult for an ordinary person to enter the place where necromancers live. Taking off her hood, the girl with bright eyes announces that she has come for him. Us tries to remember her name, and his corpse knight suggests that it is Naren. Naren arrives and calls the talking corpse knight absurd, and accuses Us of playing dirty. She takes out something that looks like a slingshot, declaring her intention to eliminate Usa, the culprit of everything. Naren shouts that this is her first priority and prepares to fire. A sudden blow knocks her off her feet, and Popuri stands over her body, breathing heavily. Popuri angrily asks how she dared to say such a thing to Usu, holding a bloody book in her hand. Later, a tied-up Naren sitting on a chair screams that although her attempt failed, the world will not turn a blind eye to his atrocities forever. The bound Naren screams that even if this is her end, someone will surely come and expose his vile nature. Popuri, holding a shovel in his hands, asks if she can bury him in that case. Eleanor says that Popuri has also gone crazy, but Us asks her to stop exaggerating, assuring her that no one will die here. Us turns to Naren, saying that he understands her worries about Eleanor, but everything is not as she thinks, and he will now explain everything. To which she shouts that this is complete nonsense. Naren furiously declares that no matter what he says, he will never be able to break her care for Eleanor and her determination. Eleanor quietly asks if this is true, then invites Naren to see for herself. She detaches her arm and reattaches it, asking Naren where she has seen someone whose arm falls off and grows back. Naren, shocked, asks if this means the red thing in her chest is really her heart, and Eleanor suggests she take a closer look. Naren cries out in embarrassment, saying that they are not at that stage yet, and Eleanor sighs tiredly. Having realized everything, Naren says that it turns out that Eleanor is now fighting, risking her life. Eleanor explains that during her time as a mercenary, she killed and risked her life for money. Us asks Naren if she now understands their situation, and says that if she truly cares about Eleanor, she should do everything she can. He adds that she must help them win, and he will also fight, even if he has to die, as long as Eleanor is not harmed. Later that night, all four of them are lying in two beds. Popuri is happy that there is one more of them. Us calmly confirms that yes, they weren't just sleeping. Naren can't believe that a man, being in the same room with such a beauty, simply slept. But Us doesn't understand what else they were supposed to do. Naren sighs with relief and thinks that it was only after they came here that she first saw Mrs. Eleanor smile so often. In someone's dream, a crowd is screaming with delight, but a dark monster looms over the sleeper and says that now it is his turn. The dark silhouette of a man says that there is not much time left, and as soon as he wins, everyone will come to look at him. The silhouette with glowing eyes smiles ominously and says that when this happens, he will no longer be able to be ignored. The silhouette's face contorts in rage and he screams, "How dare you, you wretch! Seriously think you can do this?" The action moves to the arena, where the start of the second chance qualifying round is announced. It is reported that 250 participants came to this round, but only 49 will advance. And Us, Eleonora, and Popuri are sitting in the spectators. Eleanor asks Us if he came to see Balak, to which he replies that he did that too. Us reflects that from now on, the probability of meeting a serious opponent is high, so it is worth preparing in advance. Someone notices Balak and doubts whether he will be able to fight for real this time, because if he loses here, there will be no further way. Eleanor asks if the rules of the fight are still unknown, and Us suggests that since there are 250 participants, it is unlikely to be a regular battle. Popuri grabs Usa's hand and points excitedly at one of the participants, but Eleanor immediately asks her not to grab his hand. Us looks in the indicated direction and is shocked to see a strange creature that looks like a bird and does not understand what it is. The voice announces that the number of participants eliminated in the second main stage and gathered for the second chance round is... A number lights up on the large board, confirming that there are 250 people participating in the round. The leader in the skull mask says that the number of those who will be able to pass is only 49. He shouts loudly into the microphone that this will be a mass fight without rules. The trio sits in a daze as the host explains that 250 participants will be competing in the arena at the same time. The announcement is made that the fight will begin in a minute, and the participants in the arena are horrified by the news of a full-scale clash. The host calls on everyone to get ready because there are 30 seconds left, and Us and Bolak are tensely awaiting the start. A small red creature with an axe spins rapidly in an attack. The masked, horned contestant confidently declares that he was simply unlucky in the last round and is not one to be eliminated so easily. He looks down, puzzled, as a powerful column of purple energy rises up. The participant screams in horror, not understanding what is happening, and the presenter asks those who have been chosen to come here. A character in a plague doctor mask states that he wants everyone to feel it. He wants everyone to feel the pain that has weighed on him all his life. He enjoys the sound of himself trampling everyone around him. He says that by trampling everyone, he climbs higher and higher. He asks his mother to wait for him, because he will get to her soon. Another participant named Bolak calls on the others not to get close to the enemy, but then he himself shouts and calls for help. The host informs one of the participants that he is eliminated, but the loser cannot come to terms with this. Bolak is surprised to realize that he won this round. The losing participant continues to shout that he won and insults the organizers. An invisible voice asks Bolak if he is really that scared as he sits alone among the ruins. Bolak compares his life to a tattered book, reduced to pathetic trash. He says that in his life, without a single completed page, he was able to create one magnificent one by reaching the end. This page is too precious to him, and he is afraid to turn it over for fear that it will be torn. The woman who appeared tells Bolak that the pages of his life that she saw were not worthless scraps. Bolak considers his life a failure, but the woman counters that life does not judge him. She explains that life simply goes on as usual, and he himself judges her as a torn page. She reminds him that as a child, she was the largest among her peers, and he confirms this. The woman admits that she was very ashamed of this because she was not like everyone else, and asks if he remembers his words. As a child, he told her that there was no point in a whale envying a lion, because a whale was simply living the life of a whale. He added enthusiastically that the whale has its own special coolness. Bolak is surprised that she remembers, and she replies that he was the first person to tell her something like that. She says that she really liked his words, and they made her think about her own path. It was because of this that she was able to become the coolest woman who owned a butcher shop. Bolak agrees that she tried harder than anyone else. She says that thanks to him, she understood the simple truth that a rabbit is faster than a tortoise, but slower than a cheetah. The rabbit itself is neither fast nor slow, because anything gains value only in comparison. The essence cannot be evaluated. It simply exists. She explains that he considers his life to be in tatters because he compares it to an imaginary ideal. For her, the time he wants to get rid of is a precious memory that helps her hold on. She suggests that the hardest thing in life may be learning to love yourself. Bolak wonders if loving yourself is really harder than winning. He wonders if he can love himself. But at that moment, another member yells at him to be careful. As he is attacked by a huge insect, he ends his thought by asking if he can truly love. The next moment, purple energy pierces the monster's eye. Perhaps the hardest thing is to learn to love yourself, not to win. Bolak thinks that there is nothing in his life that he is good at, and therefore anyone can judge him. He doesn't know how to love such a life. And suddenly he remembers a boy who brags to his mother about third place in a competition. In the memory, the parents praise their talented son, who shows them his trophy. People were talking about how necromancers had become very popular and were hoping that their family would also have a celebrity. Bolak holds his first trophy, which he received when he was 11 years old. Bolak recalls that there were actually only 8 people participating in that competition, but it was still important. He mentally asks himself as a child whether he enjoyed participating. Little Bolak enthusiastically replies that he had a lot of fun and that he will definitely become a great necromancer. The memories are transported to moments of failure, when he would cry out in despair that he had failed again and try to cheer himself up. He wrote furiously in the book, promising that the world would hear from him again. It was a strategy he had been plotting all night since his first elimination in the preliminary round. He cursed the lousy world, not understanding why it was treating him this way and what he had done wrong. And this is the wolf's skull that he threw in anger when he fell through for the 5th time. These were such pathetic and shameful memories that he wanted to erase them. There were moments when he lay on the floor sobbing, thinking that he could not and would not endure it any longer. But there were also moments of triumph, when he was glad that he had finally managed to figure everything out. He remembers wanting to sleep for another 10 minutes, and how he sat with his head in his hands in despair. All these past moments and all his past versions, this is him. His past self tells him that he may seem pathetic compared to others, but he lived the best he could. He realized that his path was not a torn page, but a story entirely filled with himself. Now he wonders if he can turn the page, and if he can live without regrets. Then, as has been the case up until now, his past selves support him, and he decides that everything will be okay. The flashback ends, and in the present time, a red attack flies across the arena. The spectators watch the scene in amazement, and a bright flash is reflected in the eyes of one of them. Belladere screams in rage at how dare he attract more attention and orders his undead to die. Bolak's attack easily destroys Belladere's summon, leaving her in silent shock. At that moment, his gaze was directed not to the side, not up, and not even down. At that moment, what filled his gaze was only his own powerful technique, shining with red light. The host announces that the battle is over, the round is completed, and all remaining participants move on. Bolak leaves the arena thinking it was cool, and hears someone shouting his name. His friends enthusiastically shout that he is doing well and applaud him. The voiceover states that 2 participants attracted the most attention in this round. These participants were Bolak and Belladere. Although no full-scale collision occurred, Bolak's technique attracted so much attention that others began to study ways to counter it. In addition, Belladere's technique, called the Pendulum of Repentance, also attracted great interest and became the subject of analysis. As a result, the total number of participants who made it to the 3rd main round, it consists of 300 people. Bolak's friends discuss that if you don't count the champion, there will be 299 people left, which is an odd number. A fox girl suddenly appears and explains what happens when the number is odd. She says that in such a case, the champion chooses one person and gives him a special promotion. The zombie girl gets angry and screams at the fox to keep her face off him, but she brazenly replies that she will do whatever she wants. Another girl offers to deal with her, but is ordered to sit silently. The guy, ignoring the argument, asks what a special promotion is and whether it's possible to just pick anyone and promote them. The fox girl confirms that one person can be chosen and sent to the next round, making the number of participants even. The boy with blue eyes thinks hard about who the champion will choose and decides that he will also help. The host, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, begins his speech, addressing all participants of the 3rd main round. He greets those gathered and asks if they feel the world is beginning to notice them, and how the attitudes of those around them are changing. The presenter wishes them to fight to the end and burn their souls to become great people. He ends his fiery speech by saying that they must leave their name in this world forever. The host announces that due to an odd number of participants, Champion Callan Crow will choose one fighter and grant him a special promotion. He explains that this signifies the champion's interest in the chosen fighter, and asks Callan which necromancer he wishes to choose. The champion reproaches someone for rushing forward without knowing his place and trying to get out of his shadow. Belladere, wearing a plague doctor mask, receives a special promotion and advances to the next round. The host explains the rules for the 3rd round, where pairs for one-on-one battles will be determined by random draw. Lord Bredrick begins his speech by expressing his excitement at the sight of so many distinguished necromancers and reflecting on their difficult path. He goes on to talk about his lonely struggle in the administration and the tragedies he had to endure as a lord. The lord declares that the participants, as the hosts of the tournament, must know the history of these lands, and he intends to tell it to them. After the draw, the heroes discuss what the lord has been saying for a full 30 minutes and come to the conclusion that even the toughest necromancers are nothing compared to the authorities. The red-haired girl timidly asks who their next opponent is, and the guy grimly replies that it's Bibi. The girl with white hair asks who it is, and the redhead fearfully explains that Bibi from the Cradle is a very famous and creepy eccentric. The guy asks if she fought Bibi, and the girl replies that it was after the fight with her that she began to study long-range combat instead of close combat. She warns that Bibi is ruby-ranked and strong against melee fighters, so she advises them to use their right of refusal. The guy thoughtfully replies that refusal could be considered if their goal was simply a high rank. He makes it clear that they are aiming for first place and want to be the best. He says that they will still have to defeat her, and the fact that their friend has already fought her could be an advantage. Their masked comrade says that everything is ready on her side, and since the enemy is a terrible weirdo, she is ready too. The main character, dressed in battle gear, stands in the arena and thinks about his opponent, Bibi. Bibi sits in her cradle and reflects that the outside world is frightening, and being an adult, Making choices and taking responsibility is too difficult. She jumps up and down with joy and proclaims that this is why they will be babies all their lives. Her opponent, in a mask with horns, is completely perplexed and wonders who this crazy woman is. The protagonist explains that this is Bibi from the cradle, who is supposedly about 30 years old, but she wants to be a baby. He adds that she is a famous necromancer with a crazy fan club called the Baby Club. The red-haired girl, with horror on her face, says that such an incomprehensible fan base must be destroyed for the sake of humanity. He warns his comrade to be careful, as Bibi's rank is comparable to Raoul, to which she replies that she knows and feels it. She senses a strange and sinister aura emanating from one of Bibi's creations. Bibi continues her thoughts about how a baby does not need to bear responsibility and receives unconditional love. She self-confidently wonders if anyone can defeat her, so free and immensely loved. In her thoughts, she sees herself as a baby who exists only to be loved and who does not care about the outside world. She continues that she needs no responsibility, no choice, no regrets. This place is her cradle, which protects her, endlessly warm, soft, and full of love. Meanwhile, in her room, the real Bibi is sleeping and muttering something in her sleep. Someone calls insistently for Mrs. Bibi, and she suddenly wakes up screaming, asking what the hell she wants. She screams that she asked not to wake her when she is a baby, but the servant informs that the participant Us did not use the right of refusal and will fight with her. Bibi asks who Us is, and the servant replies that he is a rookie necromancer who defeated Raoul and has not been defeated yet. The servant reports to Bibi that, according to forecasts from leading agencies, she is leading by a small margin. Bibi is surprised that he is a newbie, but his performance is already at such a high level. She falls capriciously onto the bed, screaming that she doesn't care because now she's a baby and doesn't know anything. Meanwhile, the red-haired girl explains to Usu that Bibi is a counterclass for close combat fighters. She adds that Bibi's defensive tactics negate almost all close-range attacks. In her opinion, the only opportunity to attack is the moment immediately after the start of the fight. Before Bibi goes on the defensive, he will have only a few seconds to strike. The battle begins and his summoned creature immediately attacks. Us signals to his creature, counting down the seconds until the strike. The creature delivers a powerful punch straight into Bibi's protective barrier. The attack fails and Us orders his creature to retreat because it cannot reach the target. Retreating, the creature asks in confusion what kind of defensive tactic this is. Us confirms that it does seem that way, and asks the creature what exactly it felt. The creature replies that the barrier feels like a soft cloud, but the deeper you go, the more it restricts movement. It suggests that if it were to move any further, it would not be able to move at all. Us understands that this is the very cradle of death. The red-haired girl in the flashback says that no one knows what the death cradle is made of, but she thinks it's some kind of thread. These threads do not burn in fire and are so soft that it is impossible to find the point of impact, so it is impossible to pierce them. She explains that at least a minimum of resistance is needed to transmit the impact, and the worst thing about the cradle is that it is soft at first. But as the movement penetrates, it becomes increasingly drawn together by billions of thin threads, blocking the blow and holding the target. The girl suggests that Usu use a special weapon if the first attack fails. She opens the box and shows him a whip-like weapon. The girl explains that thanks to the connection with the nervous system, this whip is easy to control. Us is surprised because this is her invention, and necromancers never reveal the secrets of their weapons. She blushes and shyly admits that he is a special person to her. Another girl intervenes in the conversation and asks her to stop blushing. Us thanks her and promises that they will definitely avenge her. Returning to the present, the creature with a whip in his hand decides that the fox's skill can be relied upon. It rushes into the attack again, shouting that it will try again. After the strike, the creature feels incredible destructive force and decides that it was a good blow. US orders to continue the attack and gradually break through, and the creature agrees. The whip strikes the cradle, and the creature dodges the counterattack. It continues to dodge the numerous attacks coming from the protective barrier. Us mockingly ask how long she intends to remain a baby in her cozy cradle. He screams for her to disappear along with it, and the creature deals a crushing blow. Inside the cradle, there is another creature that makes baby sounds. The combat creature notices that the enemy is not at all harmed, but then sees something. Taking a closer look, it notices a creepy monster inside the cradle that looks like a baby. The baby monster screams and throws one of the glowing objects at him. The item explodes on impact with a USA creature, dealing damage to it. Us rushes towards the monster's main body that has appeared, realizing that it is not a real baby. He calls on the monster to stop being capricious. An unexpectedly powerful stream of water throws him back, preventing him from getting any closer. He struggles to resist the current, wondering if this cradle can be controlled at all. The necromancer warns that Us has gone too deep and his body is barely moving. The necromancer notices that there is a bit of space behind him and decides to try to pull out Us. At this time, the baby monster screams again and throws another explosive object at him. Us is thrown aside by the blow, and his weapon is embedded in the ground. Upon landing, he thanks the necromancer for his timely assistance and warns him of the danger zone around the cradle. The necromancer ponders a plan, unable to approach or use a weapon, but asks Us to trust him. Us expresses trust, but immediately asks about the monster's uncovered face. The necromancer explains that such a creepy design was created intentionally and is not the result of using ready-made material. The monster makes baby sounds while looking at the baby in the cradle. Us comes to the conclusion that the monster really does think of itself as a baby. Instead of fighting, it continues to play, throwing explosive objects at him. A powerful explosion knocks Uasa off his feet. The necromancer calmly notes that such biological weapons always have a limited supply. Us confirms his words, remembering that he saw bombs in the area of the monster's stomach. He guesses there were about 20 or 30 of them. The necromancer develops a strategy based on depleting the enemy's ammunition, but doubts they can hold out. Us is confident in his abilities, as they have become much stronger since the last similar battle. The baby's attacks were not continuous. He actually attacked intermittently, as if playing and having fun. Because Us also couldn't attack properly, the fight dragged on much longer than expected. 2 hours have passed since they entered into confrontation. The necromancer notices that Us's hand is shaking, but he assures him that everything is fine. The necromancer himself is also tired, as he has to maintain concentration for too long, but he is ready to continue the fight. Spectators are surprised how they can fight for so long, since the participants can't even drink water. It turns out that you can't bring food or water during a match, and a protracted fight can only be ended by surrendering. The longest battle lasted 37 hours, 32 minutes, and 4 seconds. Her friend realizes in horror that this literally means fighting in the arena to the death. This is the essence of the Battle of the Necromancers, and the girl begins to worry about Lady Eleanor. When asked about physiological needs, she replies that for such cases, participants wear small diapers. Us notices that a hole appears in the cradle for a moment, and wonders if the enemy is trying to make them relax. The necromancer assumes that the enemy is fighting instinctively, and a possible guess occurs to him. He puts forward the theory that this cradle can only be maintained in the infant state. Us doubts it, but remembers that each necromancer has his own conditions for activating techniques. Then, if she is forced to perceive herself as an adult, this cradle may weaken. Us agrees with the plan and asks how they can do it. The necromancer replies that no one can remain a child forever, because there is a monster called time. Us looks at the cradle and notices that over time, that side is indeed gradually weakening. Us realizes that real pain will eventually make the enemy stop feeling like a baby, and concludes that time is on their side. As expected, BB's cradle did not lose strength over time, but it did become increasingly unstable. However, Us missed the fact that the monster called time comes to everyone equally. 20 hours and 32 minutes have passed since the start of the match. The spectators in the stands are surprised that the fight is not over yet. Time is a monster from which no one can hide, and it moves inexorably forward. In 20 hours and 32 minutes, USA's body became severely dehydrated, leading to increased blood viscosity and nerve paralysis. His lips were dry and cracked, and his vision began to blur. He was in excruciating pain, and due to a lack of oxygen in his brain, he couldn't even stand. His opponent, BB, was also exhausted and shouted in anger at him to stop. The ally notices that the main body of the cradle has appeared and realizes that the enemy is also at its limit. He prepares to attack and shouts that it is time to advance. Turning around, he calls out to Usa in surprise, reminding him that they had almost won. Us lies on the ground without strength, unable to answer the call. BB, who is also on the verge, says he only has 2 bombs left. His partner desperately screams at him to wake up and scolds him for not getting enough sleep before the fight. Another ally sees the monster advancing and calls for everyone to rally for a final attack. USA's partner begins to insult him, calling him a dumbass and useless trash. Suddenly, she changes tactics and starts talking about how handsome, kind, and brilliant Us is. She continues to praise him, saying that he is the best and very cool when he tries. In a fit of emotion, she screams that she likes Us, and this makes him open his eyes. He asks, stunned, what she said, but she denies it and orders him to focus on the fight. An ally notices that the cradle has been neutralized and shouts that this is their chance. A small puppet ally with a hammer rushes to attack the enemy. USA's partner also enters the fight, deflecting a projectile flying at them. She successfully deflects the attack, which explodes to the side. BB gets angry and says that he saved the last bomb for close combat. He rushes at USA's partner, screaming that if he can't win, they will explode together. Suddenly coming to his senses, Us uses the pinpoint strike ability. A powerful blow pierces the enemy through and through. Us breathes heavily and has difficulty saying that they won. Having said the word victory, he loses consciousness and falls. The next moment, he suddenly opens his eyes and sees an unfamiliar girl right in front of him. He wakes up in bed and learns from her that he is in the medical room for participants. Us asks if they won the fight, and the girl confirms, adding that it was the longest battle this year. A woman wearing glasses enters the room and says that she hasn't had such a fierce battle in a long time. She admits she didn't expect to be eliminated so early, and now her tactics have been exposed. The woman sighs that, as expected, it is impossible to remain a baby forever. Us is surprised to realize that it is his opponent, BB, and she explains that the stage image and reality are two different things. He agrees it was a great fight, but something still bothers him. Us extends his hand to BB, saying that he was simply a little stronger. BB shakes his hand, calls him a funny guy, and offers to contact her if he wants to be a baby since she is older. With a sly smile, she promises to show him what a joy it is to be her baby. His companion babbles sheepishly about debauchery, while Us examines the business card he received. The business card features a picture of a pacifier and the words Baby Club. Time goes by, and there are 150 participants left in the competition, not counting the champion. A white-cloaked mustache heads towards his next opponent. In the doorway, he sees a mysterious figure in a cloak with a glowing eye. The next match is a diamond rank event, where the bottom 50 participants will be eliminated. The triangle deathmatch begins, a match in which 3 participants fight simultaneously. The match ends as soon as one of the 3 falls, requiring the participants to be able to unite against the most dangerous opponent. It is also possible to quickly eliminate the weakest victim using temporary alliances and betrayals. Opponents can only be recognized during a short 5-minute meeting before the start of the fight. During these minutes, participants must determine tactics by playing a psychological game. Us finds himself in a waiting room with his 2 opponents. Us notices that one of the opponents, a bald man, is only gold ranked and relaxes a little. The second opponent turns out to be his friend Ira, and he decides that they can come to an agreement and easily eliminate the third. He approaches Ira with a proposal to join forces again, since fate has brought them together. Ira silently shows him a sign that says she made a serious mistake in the last battle. Us is surprised because he thinks she's been doing a great job so far. On the sign, he reads the phrase, "I did not eat your night." She explains that she doesn't know why the cat decided this, but now Whisker is the most serious threat to her plan. So this time, she is determined to absorb him. Us is stunned when Ira lets out a threatening meow. The third opponent, a muscular masked fighter, mistakenly thinks the threat was directed at him. Us confirms that she said so, but he himself does not understand the reason, because they had a normal relationship. He assumes that Ira wants to absorb him to copy his abilities. Or maybe she just considers him the most serious threat and wants to get rid of him beforehand. His new ally agrees that this is logical, but reminds him that they were once comrades. Us grimly concludes that in this fight, there will be only one winner. The masked fighter asks about the plan, and Us decides that since she challenged them, they need to act. He clenches his fist and says firmly that they will accept this challenge. He explains that Ira's night grows stronger by absorbing others, so it is to their advantage to stop his growth before the end. The host loudly welcomes everyone to the triangle deathmatch. Seeing a bald opponent, the masked fighter assumes that he specializes in close combat, where they will have an advantage. Suddenly, a huge black monster with sharp claws and teeth appears in the arena. The masked fighter realizes in horror that this is the same cat, of whose former form nothing remains. A masked mustache watches the monster and wonders how many nights it has already absorbed. He decides that there is no time to think, and they are still stronger in close combat. US orders an immediate attack, giving the enemies no time to prepare, and the triangle deathmatch begins. The leader in the skull mask gives the order to attack right now. A warrior with pink hair and a red glove rushes towards the dark creature. She realizes with horror that the monster has become much faster and dodges its attack. The winged creature gathers energy and releases a powerful purple beam from its mouth. Watching the fight, Us is amazed at the destructive power of this monster. His partner in the horned mask says that one blow took off her shield and arm, and another blow like that will be the end for them. She sees that the monster is going on the attack again and suggests counterattack. The partner is confident that during the attack, it will be difficult for the enemy to react, and she will be able to put an end to this battle. Suddenly, the warrior is thrown aside, and her instincts, hardened in countless battles, tell her something important. She realizes that no matter what she does, it is impossible to defeat this creature. Looking at her enemy, she was absolutely sure of it. The dark monster changes shape again, its mouth distorted into a creepy grin. Suddenly, the creature turns into a cute black kitten and starts meowing. Us asks his partner to wait a bit while he thinks of something, announcing a change of plan. The warrior is confused and thinks that this is neither an ordinary knight nor a monster. She feels that it is something dark that dwells in the very depths of the abyss. She suggests they take advantage of the moment while he's relaxed. But Us counters that this time is different. Us asks if she thinks he's relaxed, and she admits that if she gets close to him, she'll definitely die. She clenches her fist and says that she has always trusted his decisions up until now, but in their current state, they cannot win. Us asks if her gut instinct kicked in, and she confirms that it did. Then he suggests avoiding contact with the creature as much as possible and ending the match by hunting the bald one. The warrior takes off, aiming at another enemy. The dark monster reacts instantly, its hand turning into sharp claws. The monster's claws catch up with the warrior at incredible speed and hit her in the face, chipping off a piece of her mask. Us asks if she's okay, and she replies that she was slightly grazed, but that it was the fastest projectile attack she's ever seen. Us thoughtfully says that he doesn't know what it was, but it seems to him that he has seen it somewhere before. He suggests that the monster is a mixture of many different elements and is capable of combining everything it has absorbed. Us realizes with horror that this means he continues to evolve. The monster is once again enveloped in purple lightning, preparing for another attack. The warrior screams that he is attacking again, and tenses up to defend herself. A powerful blow sends her flying back, while their true target watches in the distance. She's about to finish this battle with one blow, but suddenly a new opponent in heavy armor lands in front of her. The armored enemy shoots golden beams, and the warrior screams at him to stop running and fight. Us swears, because he thought that the bald one was so inconspicuous that it was easy to forget about him. He remembers how the bald man heard that Ira would hunt them, so he is not going to fight, but will only stall for time. Baldy confirms that he will stall for time until Ira absorbs her, and the warrior understands that at this rate she will never catch up with him. She wants to use the jump one last time, but Us screams that she can't, because she's already used it 3 times and the leg will explode. She asks what he's suggesting then, and Us replies that he needs to get the most out of himself. Ira accumulates a colossal amount of energy and releases a destructive beam at the warrior. The warrior's attack collides with the monster's beam, causing a blinding explosion. Ira realizes that there is only one option left, because in the open area they are too vulnerable. She will have to use the terrain as cover again, turning it into an obstacle for the enemy. She decides that this tactic will give her a chance to get closer, but she has no weapon, so Us orders the left humerus to be severed. Ira looks in surprise at the spare weapon, which Usa says can withstand several hits. Us says that this is their last chance, and they need to finish the fight with one blow as soon as the opportunity arises. Ira gains confidence and believes that since it is them, everything will work out. At this time, her opponent with huge stone hands prepares his attack, concentrating energy. Ira dodges the powerful blow and rushes to attack the enemy. She sees in horror that the enemy is preparing to deliver the final, decisive blow. Suddenly, the monster says her real name, Eleanor. The monster with a huge mouth throws her back with a powerful blow. Upon landing, she screams in shock to Usu that the monster said her name. Us doesn't understand what they're talking about since the communicator only picks up their voices, but she insists that the cat called her by name. She seriously asks if it is possible that the same situation as theirs could happen, but then stops. Eleanor wonders how he could even know her name. Us urges her not to panic and to focus on the current battle so as not to make mistakes. Meanwhile, the monsters capture a high-ranking knight, although they could easily kill him. A man watching the fight realizes that Eleanor was the target and wonders who Ira really is. Eleanor sees that now the monster simply charges ahead, paying no attention to anything. Us guesses that their pinpoint strike was part of the enemy's plan to force them into close combat. She realizes that if the monster grabs her, she won't be able to do anything and will simply die. Eleanor decides to engage in battle face to face and turn the tide in her favor. She stands fearlessly before the huge, dark monster, ready to fight. Her leg erupts in blue flame as she prepares for a powerful lunge. Using her new power, she strikes straight into the monster's mouth. The spectators, in panic, shout that Madame Eleanor will die again and demand that the match be stopped. Another girl, with tears in her eyes, explains that only the participants themselves can stop the fight. Eleanor plunges her bone weapon deep into the monster's throat. Inside the monster, she sees its red core, which is its weak point. Us understands that this is the end. All his tactics have been figured out, and he has lost. Suddenly, the monster begins to convulse, and its body swells from the inside. He screams her name, realizing that she is still alive and can be saved if he surrenders. He thinks painfully, because if he gives up, then it will all be over for them. Suddenly, an announcement is made that the match is over, and the fight must be stopped immediately. The referee announces that the match is over due to the refusal of the player Ivanov, who raised the white flag. Us looks at the arena in bewilderment and cannot understand why the bald man gave up. The monster's body disintegrates, revealing a wounded girl inside, who says that his luck has run out. The bald fighter is thrown with force from the mouth of the dying monster. Later, Us asks Ivanov why he intervened when he could have won by simply doing nothing. He replies that he fought to feel alive. But here, in his opinion, there are only dead people. Ivanov explains that, tired of pointless battles and not wanting to be a pawn, he put an end to everything of his own free will. Us leaves to the murmurs of the crowd, who discuss how the fighter actually lost and wasn't so special after all. As he expected, a creepy shadow creature appears next to him and taunts him, asking if he really thought he could win. Us creaks open the door, where he is greeted by an alarmed cry, and he sees with horror Madame Eleanor. He runs up to Eleanor in a panic, realizing that everything is much more serious than he expected. Us touches her leg, covered in rough stitches, with horror, and looks at her in shock. When he asks if she can move, Eleanor replies that she managed to avoid critical damage. Us breathes a sigh of relief, realizing that the enemy's goal was not to kill Eleanor, but to absorb her. An agitated girl appears and says that Mrs. Eleanor is not an instrument, but a living person. But Us interrupts her, asking her not to dramatize. Eleanor calmly states that she was prepared for this, because the essence of any battle is the same: kill or be killed. She looks forward with determination, declaring that she will take any risk to win the prize money. While Us stitches up her wounds, they discuss what the enemy might have said, knew her name, and said that there was almost no time left. Us hesitantly suggests that this case is similar to their own, recalling the strange things that happened in the battles of the necromancers. He fears that if he reports this, Ira might be banned from participating, so he decides to stay away for now. Eleanor assumes that their opponent, Ira, thought everything through to the last detail and spoke to her deliberately. Us apologizes to her, blaming himself for the fact that his weakness put her in danger. He laments his weakness, but Eleanor asks him not to blame himself, because she knows that he is doing everything possible. She smiles softly and tells him he's doing well. Us thinks about how his life has changed. He is no longer hungry. He is recognized on the streets, and for the first time, he has comrades. Suddenly, he feels excruciating pain in his chest. It feels like everything inside him is burning, and someone is squeezing his throat, and he doesn't understand why this is happening. Voices from the crowd calling him pathetic and a loser come to mind. The shadow monster appears behind him again, whispering that many still consider him a non-entity. The monster mockingly calls him poor thing, and says that only trash comes from trash. He screams that Us will never be able to hide his vile essence and disgusting stench. Us remembers his past self, determined to rise a little higher to become the best. He vowed to become someone no one could ignore and prove his worth to the world. He shouted that he would prove the world wrong. but the inner demon only asked whether such a worthless person would succeed. The monster's giant mouth looms over him, asking if he thinks too highly of himself. The girl wakes up and sees Usa sitting at the table, surrounded by stacks of books. She approaches him and asks him with concern if he slept all night, advising him not to overexert himself. Us, with an exhausted but determined look, replies that he is still not strong enough and cannot afford to relax. He explains that Eleanor's life depends on it, and he has found ways to improve the security system to make a big difference. Sitting at the table, he mentally addresses his inner demon, promising to prove him wrong. Meanwhile, another character reasons that out of 100 people, only a few remain, and the festival will soon end. The man in dark glasses, with his feet on the servant's back, asks if this is enough, to which the servant replies that it is absolutely not. The servant declares that he will offer to fight all 365 days of the year, so that the world may enjoy the splendor of Master Plas. Plas angrily calls him a moron and asks him to stop talking nonsense, although he notes that he appreciates his efforts. He tosses the coin to another man, who happily thanks Mr. Plaus. Plaus looks at the huge combat robot and notes with satisfaction that Plaus's assistant reports that Us's next opponent is constructed from high-grade materials to counter him. Plaus is delighted with this news, because he immediately noticed Us and is looking forward to their meeting. He is gleefully anticipating the moment when Us, having lost to him, will be hysterical, in tears and snot. Plaus goes out to the crowd, who are chanting his name and demanding that Us be destroyed, and asks them to shout even louder. He demands more praise, while the audience shouts at Usu to try harder and not to screw up again. The spectators notice that the Knight of the Whiskers has changed somehow, and at that moment, a dark figure in horned armor appears in the arena.